Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Fanfiction podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Today, we're diving into a brand new story, True Terrorism in the World of Heroes Part 6 by Hypnos. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Chapter summary: In Fusion, a man faces his mistakes and states his reasons for his deception, hoping for the best, all the while the shadows began to shift onward. There is a fine line between light and darkness, between right and wrong, between arrogance and wisdom, and it's so hard to toe between them without losing to either. Chapter notes: Hello all, HYPN0S here. I am still alive. If you thought I was gone, think again. Let's just say that I lost it by downloading a bunch of games, and Final Fantasy 15 is a long game. Also, I'm prescribing like a motherfucker. On a serious note, I want to thank you all. I officially reached 1,000 kudos. I feel humbled by your continued support. I hope you all are having a good day, week, month, and what remains of the year. I can't thank you enough. Only thank you and keep up supporting me. We still have much to go. Now let's go straight into the chapter, shall we? I promised you fluff, ended up giving you despair. I joke on the last part, is mostly setting up the board for what comes next. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter 12. Fusion 2 weeks after Izuku gains conduit powers. Melissa-san, yes, Izuku. Why are we in the labs? Recording equipment on hand, computers to record discoveries, a comfy chair. I meant your lab. Melissa glanced at Izuku, this one letting out a stream of arc energy from his fingertips and forming an electric cube. Well, she began, mentally marveling at the display of arc control. To show off a little, she said with a smirk. Izuku simply rolled his eyes. He knew that Melissa's lab was also shared with other two of her friends and colleagues, people he had yet to meet but who Melissa spoke highly of. Second, want to show you something, she said, reaching for a box under her desk. Also wanted to hide you from the engineering team, or better yet, hide you from someone, she said with a bitter tone on her voice. Really? Who? Jennifer Walters. She is an A-grade bitch, Melissa hissed, as she pulled a gray-like wristband with a white gem attached to it. She is smart. You have to be on the engineering team. Delta. It's just that she gets under your skin. We have a rivalry of sorts. The Shield Watch. She had made an interface similar to the Dead Space RIG, glowing spine included, but the board chose the Shield Watch over the RIG because me and the team offered the SHD network, and well, the watch is easier to carry than a full spinal armor with a collar, a holographic HUD attached to you. Less obvious, Melissa said. Often than not, she taunts me, really grinds my gears, she must. And of course there's you. Izuku actually rose an eyebrow while a small blush formed on his cheeks. Me? What a GGGG girl would want with me, he shuddered. Well, she can be intense when she sees something that strikes her fancy. In this case, your quirk, or more specifically, your conduit powers and their ability to absorb certain elements. She will pepper you with question after question on how they work and if she can study them. But don't mention that you're aiming to be a hero, Melissa said, placing the gray wristband on her free wrist. She has this notion that quirks are only to the advancement of humanity. Trough science. She considers the concepts of heroes and villains, and therefore the dogmatization of quirks as a thing that decides your life as dumb. Also, she doesn't like heroes or villains. She considers both retarded. Melissa spoke. You can imagine what I did to her when she said Uncle Might was dumb. I really don't. Honestly, I'm scared considering the access you have to power tools, he stated simply. Relax. I just so saw her for that little comment. Little brat should had learned not to sue stupid lies when I'm just 2 feet of her. Besides, it happened when we were 10, she said. That caught Izuku's attention. She's your age. Yep, 16, insufferable bitch and horny as hell, has slept with half of her team, boys and girls. She says that sexuality is just a label and that the Greeks had it right back in the day. Way back in the day, Melissa snorted. Another reason to keep you from her and her team. You are, in their eyes, fresh meat, oriental fresh meat. They haven't had Japanese before. Izuku blush, which at one point had only covered his cheeks, now covered his face, as he now desperately tried not to freak out and slip into the storm trance, as he is now holding both hands together and forming random figures with arc light to keep himself composed. The WWR. Melissa again marveled at the sight of Izuku's control over arc light, but reminded herself he was doing this now because he was embarrassed. Not much interaction with the fairer sex, haven't we? I was considered quirkless, Melissa-san, Izuku softly whispered. How do you think girls saw me? How you think men saw me? Melissa shot back, tapping at the white gem. Instantly the wristband came to life, and began to wrap itself around Melissa's hand, covering most of it in a grayish-like tape. There she chuckled. But I paid them no mind. They said I couldn't be anything more than a baby maker, she said, flashing her gloved hand to Izuku. Joke's on them. Meet the alpha built of the full gauntlet, Melissa said with a grin, changing the subject, something Izuku appreciated. Built by yours truly, this bad boy can, right now, withstand kinetic pressure blockback equivalent of that of a rocket launcher, meaning just one of Uncle Might's soft punches, the ones that upturn cars and bend engine blocks. Yeah, many villains got hit by soft punches, Izuku muttered. That brought a small smile to Melissa as she tapped the gem 2 times and the gauntlet turned back into a wristband. Yeah, well, the ideal plan for this is that if it can handle Uncle Might's punches at maximum power, it can handle anything else, she stated. Must have been crazy to do the estimates of All Might's strength, Izuku commented. Not much. Papa worked with Uncle Might for so long he at one point recorded data regarding Uncle Might's strength. I got my hands on that data and I worked from there, Melissa began. Making the gauntlet to withstand that kind of strength was not the tricky part. There are a lot of materials that are both light and kinetic resistant and absorbent, so I could get picky. The problem here is coolant and energy, she said. The gauntlet lasts, at this point, for 1 hour, which you have to divide in 2 for the heating issue. Every equipment on the island uses sapphire wiring. It is a perfect insulant and coolant tool that allow projects that use nanotechnology and permits its constant usage without overheating any of the sensible material, Melissa said. Okay, so what's the problem? I'm a second year. No second or third year has access to sapphire wiring. It is expensive. Like, a lot. I ended up making something similar and cannibalizing one of my older projects. I really liked that pogo stick, Melissa pouted at that last remark, then shook her head. Never mind that. I need your help for my cooling issue, Melissa stated. You do realize I don't have cryomancy powers yet, Melissa nodded, yet she had an eyebrow raised. I don't know if I can access stasis just yet, Izuku confessed. Never tried. Besides, you and I both know stasis had special requirements for activation. I might have it on my guardians, and maybe I might have it, but is dark power, Melissa said. I get it. I won't press on it, but you got to realize that power, despite its origin, is just that. Power. No quirk is inherently good or evil, is just that. A quirk. All for one might sound evil, but imagine if it had been used to defang very powerful villains. Instead of building a high-tech facility to house them, you take their quirks away. Boom, a regular person is left instead. Is not the power, is how you use it that gives it is morality. I guess, but again, is darkness, another paracausal force. In-game the powers of light and darkness didn't conflicted to one another by writer's logic, but who knows how they will interact once they are exposed to one another in real life. It might be like matter and antimatter, Izuku explained. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. Besides, I wasn't asking for you to lend me some magic cold or paracausal cold, but rather heat, she said, placing the alpha full gauntlet on her desk and pulling something from where she had initially pulled the wristband. Energy issues can be fixed. The real issue is in fact heat insulation. The sapphire wiring is used because it is excellent to insulate heat in a single line and not expose the remaining material to damaging heat. The transformation from wristband to a gauntlet causes extreme heat, so much that internally it can melt the internal circuitry and the nanobots with ease. The result? The gauntlet comes with sufficient heat, able to burn your skin. The very first model burned the mannequin I tested it on. Models 2 to 20 well. Either a glitch or a crossed wired could cause a myriad of issues. This is the third alpha build. So far no problems, but the overheating that hampers the energy necessities. Ergo I need you, she said as she placed what could be described as a transparent sheet of flexible glass on the desk. It was also the size of a slice of cheese, and as thin as hair. Meet the 0-point sheet, created by yours truly, a cheap, efficient way to insulate materials without the need of the expensive sapphire wiring. On paper it is cheaper to make. In reality the process is a pain in the ass. How much of a pain it is? Izuku asked. He regretted asking that question. When Shigaraki got the go-ahead to gather his elite, the best of the best for his league, selected according to his needs and abilities, he thought, this will be easy. Apparently not. This shit was hard. Not because of lack of candidates. There was a lot of people who wanted to join. Apparently, it spoke volumes that criminals wanted to join him, a practical unknown in the criminal underworld. But when heroes had pretty much given an opening for criminals to get their bearings, things happen, like thinking. So one of these criminals had the bright idea to actually band together. Why? Because alone they get picked up like trash on the street. Heroes have superior training in numbers, and because of that, they grow cocky, a weakness that can be used to lure single heroes into combats they can't win, even intimidate them into retreating. Strength in numbers. Shigaraki hated the fact he didn't came up with this sooner, because now he was facing the reality that those who wanted to join was because they wanted to be safe, not because of his ideology or anything else. Safety against heroes, it would force them to fight large groups, larger collateral damage and chance of a hero dying in the crossfire, or a civilian, something heroes don't want to. Thus creating an impassive, it also limited his options for selecting possible recruits, to the point that he had to ask Jiran to scout some new prospects with the explicit of looking for those who actually want to do something but to group up like a bunch of pusses and do nothing. Jiran came just last night with a dossier, a god-to-honest dossier. He almost cackled at that. Shit all professional, with pictures and everything. There was even parts covered in black ink. The one about Darby looked like a code bar more than a dossier, made him giddy to learn whatever he could about the guy. With a small smirk, Shigaraki placed the folder with the dossiers back at the counter, then gave Kurogiri a look. The bartender nodded and an inky, black portal swirled into existence in front of him. Okay, I'll call you for the second portal, and so on. Shigaraki spoke as he stepped into the portal. The first thing he saw once he exited the darkness that was Kurogiri's portal was the barrel of a gun, being held by a drone. Well, Jiran wasn't wrong. You are prepared, Shigaraki said, brushing the drone aside and instead gazing around where he was, a small room filled to the brim with trash. Not the usual trash, mind you. Metal, circuit boards, parts of machines that were outdated, a bed that hasn't been cleaned in probably 2 years, or days, a desk that had an assortment of parts as well, a welding tool nearby, and then he spotted his first recruit. Sitting near a vintage-looking computer, like vintage DOS era old. Even the screen was old. Well, one screen. The other 5 screens were up to date. And the person in question, a kid, like for real, a kid that barely reached Shigaraki's waist in height, with silver eyes and black hair that curled almost into an afro being his most distinctive features. Well, that and the small, flat nose and very thin lips, and pale, like really pale. So, you're the one that hired Jiran to find me? The kid asked with a small narrow of his eyes. I did, but not specifically you, but rather, individuals with unique talents and goals aligned to mine, Shigaraki answered, slowly walking around. The drone kept flying and still had that gun aimed at him. Good. The kid hummed as he turned to his computer once more. Well, I was also looking for some outsource. Do you have any idea what kind of mess the troop caused when they blew up Raxus? Aside from pissing every single hero and vigilante in Japan, active or retired. Only vague things. Haven't paid much attention. More focused on the now, Shigaraki admitted. Figures, the kid breathed. To make it short, it is a shitshow. People like me are in high demand by everyone on the underground. They fear an all-out war breaking out at any time, and they want to be equipped and ready for it in order to survive, the kid sniped. And honestly, I can't blame them, he said as he gazed at one of the walls. Shigaraki followed his line of sight, and actually tried to bite the urge to decay the brat on sight. There, on one of the walls, was a poster of All Might. The thing was, the poster was old, like really old, judging by the costume All Might had on it, surely when he began his career in the States. Look at him, the kid spoke. All smiles, no worries. He's the reason we are in this mess. That caught Shigaraki off guard. Explain, had an All Might debuted, or appeared at all, heroes wouldn't be so complacent, they would be efficient, productive. In turn, villains would be the same. Why create chaos like a Saturday morning cartoon villain when you can use subterfuge to accomplish your goals just as easy, if not easier? He messed up everything. Had he not appeared, the troop would have been routed years ago. But because everyone was complacent that he would solve all problems, no one dared to move a finger until he did. By that time it would be too late, the kid snapped. It was not the answer Shigaraki was expecting. The kid obviously hated All Might, but not as he did, but he could work with this. He really could. You aim to change society, right? The kid asked. Shigaraki simply nodded. You'll come to realize change is not something to be forced, but to be wanted. Why you think the troop is so opposed? No one wants the change they bring. Honestly, I can't blame them. But you, Jiran, told me about your plan. What you want, destroy society, strip it of its pillars and leave it barren for something else to come. Shigaraki wanted that, yes, so did Sensei. Killing All Might won't bring about an apocalyptic change. It is a start, but won't be enough, the kid spoke. You want me to join you? Tell me your plan, he demanded. The plan? Shigaraki there smirked. The plan is simple. Right now we don't have manpower or the means to arm them. We can change both with what I have in mind. As for the plan as a whole, Shigaraki suddenly trailed off, looking at the distance. My plan remains the same. Kill All Might. But you're right, in order to destroy society at its core, the death of the symbol of peace will not be enough. He is a pillar, yes, but just one, for everything to collapse. We have to strike at the heart, Shigaraki said. And the heart is? There Shigaraki smiled, an ugly smile that promised pain, agony untold. Society itself, of course, their hopes and dreams, we take that away, until what we offer is what they want. Okay, I'm in. Shigaraki was pleased by this, pleased indeed. Charisma speech check like a motherfucker. So, how I'm gonna call you? Your file didn't specify a name, or an alias. The kid simply snorted. I have no name, not until society is changed. Until then I will have no name. Shigaraki hummed at that. That won't do, that won't do. Oh, I know. How about gadget, he said with a smirk. Yes, with what you will be working with. It fits you to a T. The kid simply shook his head. It matters little to me, as long as I get to see this new world you promise. Oh, make no mistake, Shigaraki said, taking his cell phone and dialing Kurogiri, immediately a portal forming in front of him. It will happen. So Shigaraki began. How about we go and meet our new potential, compadres? Gadget simply nodded, picking something from his desk and walking at Shigaraki's side, the drone not far behind. Jennifer Walters was, in short words, a hot woman, like literally hot. Puberty hit her harder than the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, that hard. With the body of a porn star, her words, and those who had seen her in her full glory, Dak, long smooth hair that was neatly combed and held in a bun, because she works with flammables and it might catch fire, Dak, red smoky eyes and smooth alabaster skin. She had all the ingredients to be an eye candy for anyone, let it be men or women. In fact, she does not discriminate in terms of sex. Her sexual appetite is only rivaled by her knowledge and skills on the lab, something hard considering that every person that has worked under her has ended up on her bed, or to be perfectly honest, in any other surface. But her appetite has a source: stress. Her work on the Delta Labs engineering sector are one of the most stressful works ever. Some of the most challenging projects are held and produced there. The very concept of making one of those projects feasible is alone a Herculean task because of the complexity of it, or the lack of resources. Not that they lack resources, more like the resources they need are at best 50 years in the future away of them, even with Quirks helping in the construction, and most of the time they have to invent a new, revolutionary material to accomplish the work at hand. Most of the time that material only works for just one job because it was specifically crafted for such task. It was frustrating, so much that angry sex was part of the course whenever stress levels reached that boiling point. Things spiraled out of control. The fact that Island legal age was 16 helped a lot, also because there was no alcohol to be seen from miles on the island. An incident when she was 5 had ensured that no alcoholic beverages were given on the island, security reasons she understood very well once she heard the full thing. As she walked around the halls of the shared labs of the second years of the Academy of Scientific Pursuit, no one had a better name for it. Jennifer stopped when she reached the door to Melissa's, Cora's and Michael's labs. The miracle team they were called. Melissa was a spigot of ideas and blueprints oozing out at every second. Michael was the computer savvy, capable of writing complex codes within seconds, and Cora was the engineering genius of the trio. Between the three of them there had been a push of new works and inventions that simply defied logic and helped push Island ever onward. The SHD network and the Shield Watch were examples of such team-working marvels. Jennifer would not admit it, but their work kinda irked her. The miracle team worked for the betterment of the island and by extension the betterment of humanity, but they also helped heroes. To her, heroes were a relic of a bygone era, not needed, yet kept to keep the masses happy, and by their existence it allowed villains to exist as their existence glorified quirks as means of measurement in society. It created monsters was her humble opinion. Every fight, every death that occurred backed her theory up. It justified her hate for heroes and villains. Well, not hate, contempt, disdain. They were not welcomed in a world that required progress, and heroes and villains were not only holding back humanity of its true potential, but making sure other organizations to come up and try their hand as well. The troupe was an example of this. She didn't believe their spiel that they were first born as quirkless outcasts looking for equality. No, this was about power, plain and simple. They can lie all they want, to the world, to themselves. But she knows better. Power demands control. Control leads to subjugation. Only thought scientific advancement and rejecting the dogma of heroes and villains could humanity reach its manifest destiny. The stars, that's as Izuku. Keep hammering, we need it warm and flat for the next part. You know, all this time it has sounded like sexual innuendo, you know, clang. I know. I can't help it. It happens every time with everyone. Like, not only me. You can't imagine the number of times I walked into a room thinking, oh my god, they are having hardcore sex, and finding out that they are actually working in a special project, and all their talk was unintentional sexual innuendo. Clang. Clang. Jennifer recognized Melissa's voice, a lot of times trying to convince the blonde inventor to abandon her ways and create inventions for heroes has pretty much ensured she would memorize her voice. She would also recognize the voices of Michael and Cora. This one she did not recognize. With a sigh, she approached the door and passed her S-watch on the sensor at the side of the door. The sensor dinged red and didn't permit her access. Surely Melissa applying privacy setting to prevent only selected personnel like her team and teachers to enter the room. With annoyance, she brought the watch to her and began to tap several functions on the holographic display, then passed it again on the sensor. This time it dinged green, and the door hissed open. The first thing she saw was a hammer with a bird head on the other side, on fucking fire. The second thing she saw was Melissa, with a thick apron and a soldering mask, with very thick gloves that held one of I-Island specials, the tractor cannon, or better known as the gravity tethers, a specialized gear used to move hazardous material with zero kinetic movement. It will remain stable, like if placed on a solid block of metal, and that solid block of metal had its own gravitational pull that keeps things stuck. Melissa, of course, was using her own variant. Instead of a massive-like device that needs two hands to hold, she is using what she assumes is a stripped-down version that is currently attached to her gloves. Then she finally sees the owner of the hammer and why the fuck he is on fire. Oh wait, it's his Quirk fucking Quirkletio Zumana Hammerandi Bisa Tunfiery Athersametime. Obviously the hammering stops when Melissa whirls her head to face her, and Jennifer doesn't need to have x-ray vision to know that Melissa's gorgeous face is twisted in grimace and frustration. Izuku, 2 more hits. Then help me place this in the compressor. Melissa's muffled voice erupted from within the welding mask. The boy, who now Jennifer could see had green fluffy hair, freckles and gorgeous emerald-colored eyes, also had a gnarly alien set of tattoos on his left arm, glowing orange as he hammered with his right hand, hitting his target, a transparent sludge that after 2 more hits was glowing red. Like Jennifer would never dare to get close to that thing. It must be emitting enough heat to boil an egg within its shell in the matter of seconds. Yet Melissa, or this Izuku, did not show problems as Melissa carried the thing into a specialized machine that applied atmospheric pressure akin to the one needed to compress coal into diamonds, placed into it, and Izuku closed the lid. Melissa then removed her mask, and the tension was now palpable. Melissa-san, you want something to drink? Izuku asked. Yeah, there's a vendor machine 2 floors down. Get me a Xnade, family size, and some Doritos, and get yourself some brownies and milk. You burned some calories with pyrokinesis. How you minimize that? Melissa asked as she saw Izuku walk to the door, Jennifer eyes trailing him. Simple, use the same concepts for my meditations with void light into it. Keep it small, but this one I could let go. Be back in a few, he said as he walked away of the laboratory. Take your time, Melissa called as she saw Izuku left, her eyes still trained on Jennifer. Enough, Jennifer. His 14, Melissa snapped. Jennifer just smirked. Oh, come on. That ass so tight it's begging to be spanked red. And those arms. Beefy. I like meat in my meals, Jennifer said without an ounce of shame. Again, his 14. Also his mother can and will gut you like a fish if she doesn't decide to pull your insides outside as first, the blonde inventor snapped. Kinky. Ooh, Melissa groaned to herself. What do you want? And better make it quick. I am in the middle of something important, Melissa snapped, not even wanting to deal with Jennifer's bullshit. Oh, nothing much. I was going around until I heard you and Izuku working together. Got to say, never seen him before. His a new transfer? Must be Japanese. Haven't had some Asian. Delight Jennifer again made Melissa wish for her power drill to be on reach, so she could drill her fucking tongue and stop hearing this spiel. First off, fuck off. Like really fuck off, Melissa began. Second, none of your goddamn business. Third, speak the real reason of you being here aside from your chronic sex addiction before I decide to staple your vagina, Melissa hissed in anger. Honestly, this girl made her wish a villain, or an act of God would just strike her down. For a moment, Jennifer just stared at Melissa, then began to walk around the lab, suddenly stopping upon seeing the full gauntlet on the desk. With a small huff, she put it on her wrist and activated it. Why you continue on this path, Shield? Jennifer said, gazing at the activated gauntlet. You know you're just fueling more fires. We don't need more heroes. By supplying them with new gear, you're just enabling them. Melissa took a deep breath. How many times they had this conversation before? Way too many times in her humble opinion. I do this to help people. Heroes save lives. Heroes ruin lives, Jennifer snapped. With their actions they create chaos, not progress, when you are going to see the truth. When you stop being a condescending bitch. Melissa snapped back. For hell's sakes, you come here at least twice a month to just say the same bullshit and the answer will be the same. Remain the same. You're wrong, Melissa snapped. This world need heroes. Humanity need heroes. You can't just say that they are the root of all that has been wrong, is both stupid and narrow-minded, Melissa snapped, only to hear Jennifer scoff as she deactivated the gauntlet and tossed it away. We are so hyper-focused on heroes that we are missing the bigger picture. In the past 200 years there hasn't been a single significant step onward for humanity. They are dragging us down. Oh, you're bringing that now, hey? Okay, I'm game, bitch, Melissa thought. Nanotechnology, genome mapping, artificial structuring, commerce, biofuel. Look at me in the eyes and tell me we were close to any of that 200 years ago. The answer is no, Melissa snapped. As for space travel, try to build a spacesuit that adjusts to the individual needs of the astronaut. Quirk or not. Also, we have enough problems with idiots trying to gain fame. Imagine the launch of a space shuttle being hijacked by a villain, or God forbids. The troop, there is a reason we are still on solid ground, and no, is not because heroes, Melissa snapped back. You really believe that? Jennifer asked. Resources are being funneled to continue keeping the industry, instead of being directed to really important things. Oh really? Medicine has advanced so much in the past 200 years because of the many wounded, most of them heroes who are either killed or crippled during a fight. 200 years ago we wouldn't have successful skin grafts that just required a single application or casts that acted also to encourage the growth of lost skin and muscle and prevented infection. 200 years ago nanotechnology was just a dream, now is a reality, Melissa reminded Jennifer. 200 years ago there wasn't biofuel used worldwide. 200 years ago Island was just a madman's dream. Now, all of this is a reality. So don't come saying that it's because heroes, because Island began its life as a testing facility for quirks, not heroes, and almost ended as a weapon development facility, Melissa snapped. Jennifer just shook her head, mostly in disappointment. We should have that by 2050. Hero adoration lagged everything up. Oh, grow up, Melissa snapped, causing Jennifer to actually glare at her. I don't get why you hate heroes so much, but honestly is childish. They haven't done anything to you. You haven't lost anyone to a hero or villain fight, and no matter how hard you try, most of your projects end up being used by heroes. Melissa punctuated. So for everyone's sake, do me a favor and drop the bullshit. Island is a bastion for progress, for everyone, including heroes, not the governments, not a single individual, everyone, Melissa finished as she turned around and went to her desk. You mother would be disappointed, bang. Crack. Jennifer knew she was poking the bear when she brought Melissa's mother to the conversation, and the way Melissa brought her fist to the table was an indicator that she would not get any more words lest Melissa decides to punch her in anger. Anastasia Green is persona non grata. You of all people should know that, especially after the bullshit her and the NSA tried to pull here 10 years ago. The only reason Island is on speaking terms with the United States government despite their outright outlandish attempt at espionage and coercion is because the board broke their arms with the treaties imposed to them, treaties they had to accept or risk an embargo, something they can't risk, all because of her. So if you appreciate running your mouth as you have so far, I suggest you to walk away. Now Melissa's less than subtle threat made Jennifer sigh, but still she turned around and walked away of the lab. Once outside, Jennifer actually stopped when she spotted Izuku, holding what Melissa had asked him, and as the door hissed close behind her, Izuku spoke. Next time you bully my friend, just remember, I have killed T-dolls with my bare hands, he simply stated as he walked past her and entered the lab. Jennifer just sighed as she walked away. This had been a mess, came out on a whim and nearly got punched because of not coming in with a plan, or real reason, just to antagonize Melissa. Stupid she had to rein her emotions in. She needed Melissa. Delta Labs needed her genius. Loath to admit, Melissa was smarter than her. The S-Watch was just an example of it. That gauntlet, while built for heroics, should have parts only graduates would have access to, and yet Melissa made it work. Shit, with that said she walked away. Inside the lab, Izuku found Melissa, clutching her hand in slight pain. Sighing, Izuku put the things he brought on the desk and went to her, then grabbed her hand and began using mitochondria healing. The blue and green hue of energy enveloped Melissa's hand, and she let out a small look of discomfort as she felt the bone she had cracked so back shut. Thanks, don't mention it. That's what friends are for, Izuku said. I told you she pushes my buttons something fierce, she muttered. I can see that. What she told you to make you so angry. Can't imagine you angry honestly, Izuku confessed as he let go of her hand. Melissa mulled on the question, then shook her head. She brought a subject she knew would make me angry. She does this whenever I win an argument. Just this time she decided to bring something personal, she added. It matters not, she finalized as she took the drink Izuku brought from her desk and opened it. Say, she began as she saw Izuku reach for one of the brownies, a small smile forming on her face. It was time to unwind a little. Want to see what a glass of Xnade, some baking soda and carb battery acid can do to a slab of titanium? Is it gonna explode for some reason? Izuku warily asked. All he got was a smug smiling Melissa as she pulled the titanium slab and held it in her hands. Oh, you wish. 4 days later, Midoriya's apartment. Inko was conflicted. In on itself it shouldn't be. There was a clear path before her and nothing was stopping her. Well, other than hesitation and fear. Don't get her wrong, after the ordeal she and her son and Eri had gone through, she was confident she could tackle anything without issue. But one thing was a BOW, a thing that was a problem she could kill, and problem solved. Another was her husband and what she had seen after work, and the little girl. She was sure there was an explanation, a good to honest explanation, only she had to beat it out of her husband. She slapped her hands to her cheeks, shaking her head as well. Don't, Inko, it might be feasible, but you don't know the whole story. This could be anything, she rationalized as she finished tonight's dinner. Izuku and Eri would be back from the park at any minute. After all, it had become some sort of right of them to leave once Izuku finished his classes and just hang on the park. Without a care in the world, and honestly it eased Inko's heart knowing they were close, and Eri was making some progress on her social life. Sure enough, the door hissed open, and Izuku and Eri entered the apartment. The place was still bare, considering that most of her gains were more focused on food than decorations, but she was gaining enough cash to properly furnish the place a little. Most of the first furnishing had gone to Eri's room. Most of it had been plushes and booked to color, clothes and the like. Same with Izuku in terms of clothes, and same with herself with clothes. It was a far cry from what they had before. But honestly, they were getting there faster than she expected. Her gaze turned once more to her S-watch and the message that was in it. 2 days ago she had gotten a message of Hisashi. How he had gotten her number was anyone's guess, and honestly it kind of freaked her out at first. In all honesty, after all that has happened in the last month, she actually expected it to be a message of the troop, actually warning her that they were not giving up, that they would get them in the end, no matter where they were. It was just a question of time. It had been the paranoia of that idea that had prompted her to open the message and just be done with it, and had been shocked when she read it was from Hisashi, her husband, not a proxy or a false mimicry. Only he would go straight to the point in such a message if the situation merited it. Inko, I don't know how you made it into Island. I haven't been on the loop on current events, work and all that. But I know I saw you on the commercial district, and I know you saw me. We need to talk. He was right on that regard. When she read it, they needed to talk. But not now, swamped with work. I am free in 2 days. Here's my address. Come to my apartment and I'll explain everything. Please keep an open mind on this. Is complicated and important. Hisashi, it was a short message, really short. Not the usual kind of thing Hisashi would write. It showed how important this was if he was going straight to the point. That had been 2 days ago. Out of a whim she had sent a reply that very same day, saying at what time he was to expect her. Sighing, she finished the dinner, and prepared to serve the food for the day. Her son didn't suspect anything, as he should be. He had enough on his plate considering he was the main target of the troop and the reason Aldera was on her investigation that could potentially blow the lid on a collaboration between a terrorist organization and small-time gangs, corrupt police officers, politicians, and even governmental organization on their own country. The dinner was somewhat quiet, mostly being the keyword. She asked how Izuku's training was going. He said it was going fine. He was adapting to his new powers and new mobility and strength, apparently becoming a conduit. As he called it, gave him insane resistance, strength, and agility, coupled with the one he already had. Her son was shaping to become a little monster against villains. Honestly, she felt kinda bad of thinking of her son like that, but it was the truth, and, again, honestly, it helped her think of something else aside from her impending meeting with Hisashi. Once dinner was done, Izuku went to wash the dishes, all while Eri went to do homework, which was mostly coloring, while staying on the lines, and some simple math. But again, homework. All while Inko prepared herself to go out. It was something easy. Izuku did not need to know, at least until she gets the full story of what is going on, like really what's going on. After Izuku had finished the dishes and had gone to do his homework as well, and also start working on another power, a suggestion of one of the scientists who wanted to have a second look on how he gained them, it helped her on the long run. He would be focused on several things but her and what was going on. Putting on a beige jacket, Inko turned to the door. Okay kids, I'll be out for a while. Be good. Izuku, don't let Eri-chan drink the Xnade that's on the refrigerator. Too much sugar. The small tremor that she felt as Izuku answered and made the apartment shake told her everything. He wasn't letting Eri close to the drink. Be good Eri-chan, the small but firm I will. She got from Eri was all Inko needed to hear before she stepped outside, and then prepared herself for real. Hisoshi's apartment was not that far, 2 blocks away in fact. She could go on foot, it would help her think. And she did. She made her way around, going on automatic. Her mind, however, was another story. It was running scenario after scenario, slowly but surely angering her, depressing her, passing by every spectrum of emotions. By the time she came to grips with it, she was already in front of the complex where her husband was. By the time she made it to the front of his apartment door, she had a plan. By the time the door opened on its own and she stepped in, the plan began to unravel as she stared at Hisoshi, and by God he looked like he hadn't had a good night of sleep, or anything at all to be honest. He was just like she remembers him, green, wild hair, albeit darker, way darker. But Izuku inherited his curly hair from him. He also had his freckles. She always found adorable that Hisoshi, a full-grown man, still had freckles that made him adorable. His eyes were still green. She would be worried if they changed color by some reason. But everything else was different. He looked thinner, paler. She could count the paleness to the fact he was scared, but not the thinness. Before he left she remembered he was somewhat fit. He had somewhat of a belly. She liked to rub it. It made him more down-to-earth kind of guy. He could run, of course, and his legs were in fact filled with muscles, a sharp contrast to the belly he used to carry. Now, however, he looked like he hadn't made exercise or eaten well in the past 10 years. In fact, she was scared for him. He looked sick. Hello, Inko-chan, Hisoshi began, slowly standing up. Inko rose her hand to stop him from standing up instead, and went to one of the chairs nearby, all the while she scanned the walls of the living room. Unlike their apartment, this one had decorations, and most importantly, pictures. Hisoshi was in most of them, and so was the girl she saw him that night, smiling. But just the two of them, and she also noted that she could use Hisoshi's current looks to say when the picture was taken. The oldest looking was when Hisoshi looked well fit, or as she remembers him when he left to work overseas. You wanted to talk? Inko suddenly answered. Her tone was clipped and to the point. Despite how he looked, he called her to talk. Okay then. Okay, let's talk, she stated, seeing how Hisoshi closed his eyes, God he had bags under his eyes, and took a deep breath. Where do you want to begin? Hisoshi asked. Inko considered the question. She knew where to start with. Your state, you look like shit. Hisoshi chuckled at that. Not the first person to tell me that, but honestly, you should see everyone back at the workplace. We are a mess, he admitted. You said you were understaffed when you last called. But they are working you to death, Inko stated. Hisoshi simply shook his head. Were it so simple, is not the company doing it on purpose? We lost a lot of staff because of, well, blunders. Mine was that ignited it all, Hisoshi said with a sigh. Inko rose an eyebrow, looking at her husband, then at the pictures on the wall. Is she one of your blunders? She was not shocked when Hisoshi actually looked at her, offended. Miko. Inko, I love you, but next time you say something like that I'm running you through one of the walls. Miko isn't a mistake. At least not for me, he stated firmly. Inko, again, wasn't surprised by his outburst. He was the same with Izuku when her parents presented themselves that one time. But her conception is part of the reason I'm working. We are working so hard, Hisoshi confessed. How much do you know about the treaties Island has with the major companies around the world? He asked. Not much, yet I can't see how relevant it is to the topic at hand. Oh, it is relevant, Hisoshi muttered. You see, Island is a think tank of ideas, constantly being bounced back and forth. Most of the time an invention is born because someone dared to ask, hey, would be cool to, and one of the eggheads was listening, and most of the time it happens, the project becomes a reality. There is a reason Island is known as the Dream Factory, Hisoshi stated. But dreams can be monetized, he added. Inko just leaned onward, wanting to hear more of his explanation. Companies around the world will and have done pretty much anything to get their hands on such things. The humanizer, for example. Inko blinked at that. The humanizer was a Detnerat product, a humidity device that, when activated in a room, could keep it fresh, in a stable temperature of the user's choosing, and most importantly, provided fresh oxygen. It was in high demand in highly pollution cities because of this. It was one of those products that wasn't aimed to the individual, but to a specific demographic, people in highly polluted cities who wanted some fresh air and couldn't get it in the traditional sense. It came out 8 years ago. One of Genera's bestsellers, he said with some bitterness. What people don't know was that the humanizer was to be a life support item for hospitals, aimed at patients with breathing issues, unable to breathe. The likes, it was supposed to basically act as a separate set of lungs, providing oxygen to the body directly and ensuring the patient would survive lung diseases while it was treated. Yeah, true. There are air pumps that had been used for years, but this one, it was supposed to be the next step in helping patients. Genera somehow got the blueprints of the invention and trademarked it as theirs. You want to know how we discovered the leak and how they got the blueprint? Hisoshi asked. The same way Miko was born, deceit, drugs, and a moment of weakness. In my case, however, we got out lucky. The guy who leaked those to Genera didn't, got fired, disgraced, the whole 9 yards. He had leaked a lot of things, not only to Genera, but to other companies, rival companies. He made sure that his targets were all softened up before the one doing the deed made the move. Inko blinked, not giving credit to what she was hearing. Corporate espionage. On Island, she asked. Yep, Hisoshi answered. Like I said, things got bad, like really bad. I am the way I am because the higher-ups culled a lot of people in our department. They were planning on in the midst of leaking info to other companies. Let me tell you, they cracked on that hard. The only reason it wasn't on the news is because it was this feist. He snapped his fingers. By the time the news knew what was going on, it was old news. They don't handle old news well, he said. As for me, well, mine was a special case. I got the NSA in hot water. Wanna know why? The NSA? The National Security Agency. The hell? They didn't want corporate secrets. They wanted to know what would happen in Island. They wanted control, ways to tie a leash on the island and taught it whenever they feel Island went out of hand. Like when Island brought the new engines that improved over the designs the Americans had in I don't know, 200%, or the time they showed the world the new batteries. The ones now used on almost every single wireless appliance, and that made the lithium ones the Americans had been highlighting as the future to be obsolete before coming out, and of course the board of Island, an ever-present thorn on their side. Hisoshi stated with a bitter chuckle. How this involves you? Inko asked, looking at her husband straight in the eyes. For a moment Hisoshi broke sight with her, running a hand on his face, shame clearly on his face. I was selected as a potential asset. There were more assets selected, of course. The idea was to have a network of spies planted all over Island and every aspect of it. To know everything that happened as just one spy wouldn't be enough. Of course the recruitment was different, Hisoshi said. Remember when you called me? About Izuku. Of course she does. The day she called him when it was discovered Izuku was quirkless, it seemed so long ago. Sigh. After the call I decided to return to Japan. The pay here is great. But you needed me. Izuku needed me. Also there is a subsidiary in Musutafu that would allow me to be close. I just had to pass the papers and the transfer would be set. But Hisoshi hesitated, then took a deep breath. Some of the guys heard what I was planning so decided to throw a small farewell party. We went to a bar. You know I can barely drink 2 glasses before feeling tipsy, so I just asked for soda. Then, she came, Hisoshi said with a frown. She? Inko wondered. Yeah, she introduced herself as Laura. Way later I learned that wasn't her real name, but at the time I knew her as that, Laura. She basically came and got the entire bar drinks, whenever alcohol or soda, like me and other 2 guys. Turns out that accepting the drink from an admittedly pretty woman who out of the blue bought drinks to 20 people just for shit and giggles was a bad idea, as we all learned, Hisoshi stated firmly. The drink Inko put things together. It was spiked, Hisoshi nodded. I woke up with a killer headache the next morning, with no recollection of how I got there, only that I was in one of the hotels in the island, way far of the bar. I panicked and actually checked if I still had my kidneys. Inko rolled her eyes at that. That was a 200-years-old myth. But then again, anyone would panic if they awoke in such situation. I got calls from my workmates. The guys reported the same thing, waking up on hotels all over the island, not remembering how they got there in the first place. Then 2 days later we got called over by the security agency in the island. I recognized everyone there present. The same guys and gals on the bar. Only Laura was missing. Then they showed us security footage of that night. being dragged out by a bunch of guys. None of them were registered residents of Island, but appeared that day as visitors, and they left at dawn. At the same time, Hisoshi stated, We had to stay on the island, security reasons, especially when 5 of the girls on the group began presenting symptoms, Hisoshi stated. They were pregnant. We learned this a month later after the event. They all aborted. It was considered rape and they were covered by law and allowed to either continue the pregnancy or terminate it, Hisoshi stated. We got really uncomfortable after we learned that. Me worse because I was the only one on the group who was married, Hisoshi said with some apprehension. He noted how Inko clenched her hands angrily, already putting the dots together. He could see it. He sighed again. It was 9 months later that I actually got a call, or more precisely, a visit, a woman, blonde hair and blue eyes. She was gorgeous, and also looked like David Shield's daughter, Melissa, but she looked cold, like she thought that being in the island was beneath her. Hisoshi seemed to shudder at the memory, something Inko noted. Her name's Anastasia. She showed me a picture of a little baby being held by Laura. She told me that the baby was mine, and if I wanted to ensure her safety, I had to do as told, be a good little spy and the baby would live. With Laura, that I learned was called Carmela, a member of the USMC. I had to do as asked, or else, Hisoshi said. So, you went to the higher-ups, Inko wondered. Yeah, Inko, you got to realize there was a child in danger, and she was being used to blackmail me, even more so. Anastasia, well, she threatened to tell me, Inko rationalized. Seeing him nod was all the answer she needed. It wasn't only that. She threatened to go after you, after Izuku, to destroy you. I knew she was bluffing on that last part, because if she tried that she knew she would lose me. Not she had me already. The higher-ups, well, they got incensed by this, so much that when they learned the rest of the guys on the group got the same threat, well, they could not stand idly by. To make matters short, Island has an army of lawyers, got cameras with evidence of what had occurred, the pictures handed to us, and well, names, locations. It was a crazy year to say the least. But by the end, Anastasia's little plan had caused a political storm in the States, so bad that they were afraid of losing trade with Island, who provided 80% of the gear for heroes. Without them they would be crippled, not to mention other amenities they need, parts only Island can build. Yet Hisoshi muttered. It felt like pulling teeth. They didn't want to let go. The children were their bargain chips, but they were discovered. Eventually it came to very close talks of assaults, as in sending teams to the bases where the kids were located, because they found them, and get them out, violently, Hisoshi stated. Inko just brought her hands together in a praying motion to her face, and breathed in. Fortunately it didn't come to that. They had to bend the knee. They were discovered. They dragged the name of the president to the ground as they said the order for this operation came from the highest rank, and he as the commander-in-chief had to take responsibility for their fuck-up, even if he didn't order to, Hisoshi reminded. They gave the babies back, but again they were angry. You could notice that some of them had blood pulled out of them. It made us uncomfortable. Then came the hard part. Aside from preventing Shield-san from killing his ex-wife, that information shocked Inko, but kept quiet, wanting to know what happened next. Then came the hard part. Half of the guys didn't want to have anything to do with the babies. Me and the others, well, I was married. I know what is to have a child, what is to be responsible for one. The others, well, they yearned to form a family. So we took them in. The ones that didn't got to their biological father got adopted by other families here on the island. You would be surprised how many families lined up to adopt, especially considering the circumstances surrounding them, Hisoshi said, holding his hands together and leaning in, looking at the ground. As for me, I had to take responsibility, but at the same time, I couldn't face you, Hisoshi confessed. Inko narrowed her eyes at that, hands clenching. I suddenly had a daughter, but at the same time I had a son and a wife, and I was faced with the reality that whatever choice I made, I was going to hurt someone, you and my son, or Miko. So you stayed behind, Inko breathed in. Hisoshi nodded. And for the past 9 years you have been living a double life, she said, standing up. Acting like a coward, Hisoshi looked up. And not helping us when we needed you, she added as she turned around. And what was I supposed to do then? Go to Japan? Pretend as if nothing had happened? That I wasn't drugged, raped and then blackmailed? That a small mistake nearly destroyed my life? Your life? My son's life? That I was responsible now for another life? What was I supposed to do then? Hey, answer me, Inko. What the fuck I was supposed to do then? Hisoshi asked to the retreating woman. Inko did not answer. She didn't even turn around. The door just opened as she left the apartment, then closed. Hisoshi growled, heading to the kitchen, then leaned down on the sink and screamed, fire emerging out of his mouth as he let out frustration into the metallic sink. After a while he just stopped, then just collapsed on his knees, slowly crying. He didn't know that Inko didn't made it 5 steps out of the hall before she leaned on the wall and began crying as well. 2 adults who should not be crying, and had approached the situation logically, let their emotions out. It hurt. However, Inko had been right. He had been a coward and let his fear get the better of him. He had seen what his cowardice had done. Hell, he had not even asked why Inko was on the island in the first place. Now, however, he could fix this. He had to do this. He had missed Inko so bad. He missed his son. He hadn't seen him for so long. He needed to see them. He needed them. So, he was going to face the problem head-on. Hopefully Miko-chan would be prepared to meet the rest of her family. A week later, Midoriya's apartment, Saturday. Inko glanced at her son as he prepared himself to gain another power. This one apparently he was dreading, as the process might hurt, a lot, or might not. He doesn't exactly know, so he's pretty much preparing for the worse. That means no Eri on the room while he is playing, which made her pout. Of course he kept with his studies and physical training, alongside adapting to his powers. The help the girl Melissa had provided him had been great, especially in the friend department, as those two could easily spend an hour muttering about just quirks, tossing ideas like tossing rubble balls at one another. She was also thankful for this because he called Melissa to help him with this in case it does turn painful ding-dong. Must be them, Izuku intoned. Inko had been informed by her son that Melissa was bringing 2 of her friends to help on this, people she could trust, also of her age and apparently understood what was going on under the hood, as she said to her 2 days ago, also wanted to see someone gain video game powers in real life. Who are you? Izuku's sudden question actually made Inko look at the door and freeze in shock. Because right there was Hisoshi, with the little girl, Miko. Our Inko let out a small sound of her mouth. Seeing the girl, she looked like a copy of Hisoshi, as a girl of course, shaggy deep green hair that reached to her shoulders, yellow-like eyes that were almost metallic in coloration. Her face was dotted in freckles and her skin was slight darker than Hisoshi's, clad in a cutesy shirt with an unicorn motif on the front and khaki shorts. Surely her eye color and skin color were part of her mother. And she used the word loosely because that woman who raped her husband was no mother. No sane person would do what she did. Kami, you have grown, Hisoshi said with a fond tone. Can't blame you for not remembering me, Izuku-kun. You haven't seen me for over 12 years, Hisoshi said with a fond look on his face. Izuku seemed to look at Hisoshi for a moment, processing the info given, then blinked. Chu-san, he whispered. Hisoshi seemed to light up after hearing that. He nodded, and Izuku took some steps forward, then stopped when he glanced at Miko, cocking his head in a questioning manner. Hisoshi muttered. Let's get inside, I'll explain everything, he said, motioning the girl that seemed to vibrate with energy and excitement. Inko seemed torn. Eri, who was in the room, looked at the newcomers with a questioning gaze, cocking her head in the same manner as Izuku, and as the door closed and Hisoshi and Miko took seats, Inko already knew things were going to get ugly. 15 minutes later. She hated she was right, because the moment Hisoshi finished his tale, and actually changed nothing of what he had said to her before, a silence fell on the room. Oh, she said silence. Silence implied that there was no sound coming out, but there was sound coming out. Izuku's labored breathing. He was breathing, hard, angrily, why there is frost forming on his hands. Inko mentally questioned, seeing her son trying to get a hold of his emotions crack. He suddenly exploded in shards of ice that felt wrong. Eri, who was seated on her lap, jumped in surprise, and Miko's exposed arms and legs lit up with, was that heat? Her arms and legs were emitting heat in waves. She had seen her son use cryokinesis many times to know that it's not fire, but rather pure heat being emanated. And her son. He simply exploded in ice, then somehow blinked out of existence from where he was, and appeared near the hall connecting the rooms. The not ice he was emanating from his hands suddenly vanished as he bursted into flames, then let out an arc current, then simply shifted into the void and floated, shaking in anger. She did not know if it was anger at Hisoshi or at what had happened, but he was having a hard time controlling his powers. "Oh, kaachan, I'm going to play," was all he whispered as he floated away into his room. Then silence as he entered the room. The hell was that? Hisoshi uttered. His quirkless. "You told me yourself," he said in a shocked tone of voice. Miko seemed not know what to do as she seated back after deactivating her quirk, whatever it was. "We believed it too, but the doctor was a hack. He does have a quirk, a mutation, an extreme one, Inko answered. My God, I should have stopped you and asked what brought you to I Island, Hisoshi said, clearly ashamed. What has happened since I was gone? He asked. Inko considered the question. She didn't even knew why Hisoshi was here in the first place, so she asked, First of all, what are you doing here? Why I didn't ask that the moment you showed up, she wondered. I made myself the same question when you left a week ago. Shock, fear, shame, all of the above, maybe. And as for why I am here, Hisoshi looked at his wife straight in the eyes. You were right, I was a coward that got a rise from Miko, the little girl rising up from her seat. You're not Papa, she said, only to see Hisoshi raise his hand to placate her. I hid Miko-chan, believe it or not, but honestly, there were reasons that now seem stupid considering what they ended up causing, he answered. So I came here to show I wasn't a coward, to man up for my mistakes. Inko just rubbed the bridge of her nose in irritation. Hisoshi, I love you but sometimes you make stupid choices, she said. Marrying you wasn't a stupid choice, having Izuku, having Miko weren't either. Look, you got to understand something. One of the reasons I didn't dare to tell you about Miko at all, Hisoshi said, looking at his wife straight in the eyes. I was afraid of losing my son like I lost my friend. Inko looked puzzled at this, so Hisoshi elaborated. 30 minutes later. Mass Effect, Andromeda. It was supposed to be the triumphant return of one of the most venerated IPs in the world, made by one of the companies that had mastered the art of storytelling. Hubris caused this launch to be the last of the Mass Effect franchise, not the swan song many expected, especially considering in which platforms it launched, but rather more like a dying whimper. Izuku knew that it was harsh to judge the game considering that it was made on an engine that simply scoffed at the attempts of devs to be used in a third-person open-world game. The engine had been designed for first-person gameplay, but considering they had pulled a miracle with Dragon Age Inquisition, and the team behind Andromeda was pretty much the B team while everyone else was with Anthem, well, it explained some things, like the horrible facial animation. Honestly, the very first Mass Effect had better facial animation. It still didn't explain the mess that was the script. There were parts that saved it, but the my face is tired thing didn't help much. That maybe the script was cobbled together between someone who genuinely loved the series and wanted to give it a fresh start and someone who got the script and decided to add his own spin, while having no idea on how to write a script at all. But credit where credit is due. They nailed the powers, all of them. Biotics in particular felt meaty. You could literally feel when you use them and cringe when an opponent got hit with them. Especially with Lance. Head shooting someone with Lance was the equivalent of throwing a spear at someone, and the spear had a jet engine attached to it and flew at terminal velocity, and the head was filled with explosives, basically a rocket, a very deranged rocket. It was this odd tips of info that kept Izuku from melting his controller to slag, or crunching it with his enhanced strength. He was angry at no one in particular. Apparently he finally reached that point in a teenager life where they get angry just because. Honestly, he was finding it hard not to find a reason to be angry. But most seemed to boil down to his father and his decision. In hindsight, it should be clear, Japan had not the best relations when it came to this kind of scandals, at least in modern times. It was a clusterfuck of things. But suffice to say that during the advent of quirks, the terms quirk marriages became common and replaced the one before it. Quirk breeding. It created a small time where Japan was like a hentai series and a snuff movie. Although to be honest, it seemed that trend wasn't only Japanese, it went global, but last over 10 years. In Japan it lasted 5 because of their past with eugenics and, well, war, a war that broke them, that burned them, and after years of accepting their mistakes, came quirks, and the idea of breeding an all-powerful biological superpower was too appealing that override their shame on having a hand on many deaths on horrible experiments. One could see why. Shame, even in current times, a child born out of an extramarital relation would be considered bad, not bad enough to lose your job, but it could affect your family in a more intimate level. It sure affected him, so much that he did not notice he finished Andromeda until he felt his quirk activate and began the copying process. Izuku there snarled as he tossed the controller aside and lay flat on his back. Before he felt numb, he extended his right arm and formed a dawnblade, then impaled it nearby, the well of radiance forming around him, and then the pain began. Izuku gritted his teeth in anger and pain. He knew there was a very legitimate risk that this would happen. After all, biotics cannot occur without nodules forming around his nervous system, all of it, and while the process might look painless, it is in fact because it happened while on the womb, while the fetus is still forming. and therefore there is a better chance of the nodules forming naturally and without pain. Right now he was experimenting what Jack, the psychotic biotic, must have felt while in the tender care of Cerberus, but without being cut repeatedly, tortured and drugged to create the strongest human biotic. So it was no surprise to him that time lost its meaning, yet felt like it was going both fast and slow as the pain extended everywhere, under his skin, around his skin, inside his skin, the same with his muscles. It was a pain that made him cry. But he wasn't going to scream. He didn't scream when we broke his leg. He's not gonna cry because he's growing really painful nodes all around his nervous system, and it feels like he's getting branded on the molecular level all over 1,000 times. Over at the same time, and sure as hell he's not gonna scream over it. He can take it. He didn't knew how much time passed by. He was dimly aware time passed when the well of dawn lost its potency and vanished. By that point the pain had become a small dull sting that repeated once every minute he guessed. The worst was over then his dad walked in. Wonderful. He's in hell. Izuku had to give him credit. He didn't freak out when he saw him laying on the ground, red-faced and looking like he was trying to poop his entire skeleton on one go. Are you okay, son? Hisoshi asked as he made his way in. Don't, Izuku began. You have no right to call me son, Izuku gasped. The pain was going away, but the feeling of needles being jammed constantly, alongside the feeling of ants crawling inside him, made things really cranky, especially when he was cranky to begin with. Hisoshi, for his part, sat on the bed and looked at his son, laying on the ground. Maybe, but maybe don't, unless you get why I did this, he said. What's to understand? You left us, Mom, me. You were ashamed, Izuku snapped. Yeah, I won't deny that, Hisoshi said. Izuku was about to say something else, but Hisoshi beat him to it. But not of you, he clarified. Izuku simply looked at his dad right in the eyes. I was in a bad place. You got to realize that. You stuck to the conversation. I said you the same thing I said to your mom. I wasn't lying. You can check in with Shield-san, Hisoshi said, seeing his son glaring at him. Then he sighed, realizing what was going on. You're jealous, Zuyu Los Ni. Don't you raise your voice, young man. Also stop talking in tongues. It's weird. Makes the apartment shake, Hisoshi snapped. And yes, you are, he added. But guess what? I wasn't exactly in a better place either. I couldn't see my wife. I couldn't hold my son. I couldn't be in their lives because an entitled cunt that thought I would make a great spy and used a baby, my baby, to force my hand. And when I got her back I was faced with a choice. Go back to Japan and have my entire family, my life, ostracized by the community because of me, my mistake. I wouldn't lose my job, but sure as hell would lose my family if I returned with such a heavy burden. Or I could stay, work and pray that you two would be fine, that you would carry on without me, that somehow my wife, the love of my life, would find someone else because I was a fucking coward, Hisoshi snapped, fire coming out of his lips at every word he spoke. Oh, and you think we had it easy? Izuku snapped, his voice making the room vibrate. Seeing Okasan waste away because of me? Because I was not to norm according to the world. I was bullied, ostracized, hit. I was alone. When I needed someone I had no one, just Mom, and she had her own problems, so I didn't bother her. We were alone. We needed you. You don't think I don't know that? Hisoshi snapped back, angry. Every time I called her I wished I could hold her. Damn it, I wish she would pass you so I could hear you. Fucking damn it, I lost the best years of your life because I was afraid I would lose you, that I would destroy my family, Hisoshi hissed, feeling deflated. Izuku looked at his dad, his eyes focused on him. So he didn't see that his mom, Eri, and his half-sister were at the door. See it on my way. I returned to Japan, with a baby on tow. I come home. I present it to your mother and you, he began. You won't see me, or the baby as family. You would see the baby as your replacement. And as you grow up, with no Quirk, you see her develop her own, and things go bad, Hisoshi said. You don't know that, Izuku whispered, only to see his father shake his head. Oh, but I do. I saw it happen once, and once was enough. I lost my friend because of that, Hisoshi morosely replied. His name was Sakurai, Hisoshi began. He was quirkless, his father was an ass, and his mother enabled his father habits, which mostly consisted of doing things that tended to affect Sakurai, and when he asked why he wasn't told, their answer was the same. This is our way of telling you, Hisoshi muttered. I am ashamed to say it, but we weren't kind with him either. We didn't bully him per se, but we didn't help him either. Our class was odd. We barely knew each other. We knew who could help one another, but we didn't form friendships either. It was a sad class after what happened to him, Hisoshi said. What happened to him? Izuku asked. Well, unlike me, his father actually went out and got another woman pregnant. His wife approved. Sakurai didn't knew nothing about it until he came, one day, with a baby on his arms, a baby that took over his room. When he asked, the excuse was the same. This is our way of telling you, Hisoshi said. He was 10 when that happened, a 10-year-old quirkless kid who just saw being replaced by a baby. Things got worse as the years went by. When he was 14, his little half-sister developed a quirk, and shit got really bad then, he sighed. He was about the only person who knew college degree math, so everyone crowed around him for help on the subject. Hey, if he can tackle college degree math, school degree math should be a breeze. So once in a while someone would end up in his home, getting some help, and hearing all the nice things his father would tell him, why you can't be like your sister. Why you're like this. You know, demeaning stuff. Nearly everyone on the classroom knew. But we did nothing, Hisoshi said. Then, it happened, middle of October. It was getting cold. We just finished the day when out of the blue Sakurai began to hug everyone in the room, telling them thank you for being there for him and stuff. In hindsight, it should have raised red flags on our heads. But it didn't. We thought little of it. We went about our day like usual. Everyone went their separate ways. No friends, acquaintances, but Sakurai called us friends, Hisoshi muttered. The next day, the class president, Tomoyo, as usual came first, or so she believed that day. One of the teachers there told her that Sakurai had come early, really early. She paid it no mind. She went to the classroom, and then she found him. Izuku actually blinked, not wanting to hear it. Please, tell me he didn't. Hisoshi simply looked at his son. He did. There was no way for him to hang himself. But there are knives. He slit one of his wrists and punctured his femoral artery. Then, he slit his own neck. Can you imagine how loud Tomoyo screamed that day? She was nearly emotionless, but seeing Sakurai like that, she was a crying mess when the forensic teams came to remove his body. She was hysteric during his funeral, but it was worse for his family, Hisoshi said. I remember going to that funeral and seeing his father, this man, who seemed immovable by his beliefs, crying like a baby, holding a picture of his son. His mother was in hysterics, so much that some guests had to be for her lest she collapses, and his half-sister. She was crying, not understanding why her brother was gone, why he left her when she loved him, Hisoshi said. The aftermath was worse. That family was broken. The father, he never was the same man. He became insular, overprotective of his wife and daughter, clingy, a far cry of the man he was before. The wife, she was a shell of her former self, so much that she died 3 years later. She never recovered. She wanted her baby, her son. And the half-sister? She grew up to resent her father, so much that when he died 10 years after his wife's death, she wasn't present at his funeral. We didn't knew nothing more of her afterwards, Hisoshi said, finishing his tale. Our actions have consequences, Izuku. It affects people. After what happened with my incident, and Miko, I realized I was going to place you in the same position as Sakurai if I returned. I didn't want to. I didn't want to learn from someone that you hugged everyone one day and the next you decided to, because I couldn't live with that. I wouldn't be able to live with that, Hisoshi cried. I love you. And I lost so much of your life because I was afraid I would lose you, he finalized. Izuku felt all his anger bleed out of him after that. Yet, it still. Izuku couldn't be angry anymore. He just looked at his father, not knowing what to say. I have no excuse for what I did, and honestly, I don't know if I can make up for the lost time, Hisoshi continued. But, if you let me, and if your mom wants it, I want to be with you both, Hisoshi confessed. I want to be part of your lives again. But if you guys want to, it's going to be hard, Inko spoke, catching the attention of father and son, seeing Miko and Eri nearby. It hurt, Hisoshi, won't deny this. It hurt my trust. Your son's trust, Hisoshi looked downcast, and Inko bit the urge to sweep down and pick him up in a hug. Honestly, it had been too long, and despite looking really thin, there was that boyish charm that got her attention long ago. She knew in hindsight he meant to harm, especially after the bomb that laid on them. He really didn't want Izuku to end like Sakurai, and them like the family of Sakurai. There wasn't ill intentions in his actions. He was genuinely afraid of what might happen to his family, to their family. So Inko began. The first you will be doing will be to introduce us to your daughter. Then, you will cook us that dinner I used to like. Yeah, that one, Inko added. We all are going to sit in the living room, eat like a family, try to see how we make this work. Then, tomorrow you and I are going to a date because you owe me 12 years, mister, she said with finality. And then we'll see, agreed. You're too good for me, Hisoshi said as he stood up and hugged his wife. Inko returned the hug. She really missed him. then looked at his daughter, then at his son, and took a deep breath. "Welp," he began. "First off, before anything, why Izuku is on the ground?" Hisoshi asked, "and why he has tattoos." "His quirk is acting up," Inko replied smoothly. "Which reminds me, young man, didn't you tell us this might hurt?" Izuku nodded. "Well, I regret every choice I have ever made in my life, including picking clothes," Izuku mumbled. "I hurt," he added. "Wait, what?" Hisoshi mumbled as Miko made her way to Izuku, then simply kneeled, and plopped on Izuku's belly, Eri following the example not a second later. "Why?" Izuku mumbled. "Those two doing that had triggered a world of hurt. Little sisters do this, get used to it. Also, my name's Miko, nice to meet you, big bro," she said with a grin. "I am starting to have second thoughts." Inko just rolled her eyes, then looked at her husband. "Let's go to the living room, I'll explain everything to you. Let me warn you, it gets crazy." "Okay, who's the little white girl?" thought. Part of the explanation. "I cannot believe it." Melissa looked at Cora and Michael, both looking at anything but her. The day we have exclusive access on how a quirk that laughs at every no law and see if it's feasible to grow dark energy manipulating nodules is the day you two decide to fuck, really." She looked at her friends, honestly. When she told them, jokingly, to get a room, she meant a room with a bed, not her damn desk. Cora actually looked proud. The dark-skinned and white-haired girl looked proud. Proud of having sex on her desk, of her butt touching her damn keyboard, all while Michael was blushing as much his face matched the color of his hair. "Well, anything to say in your defense?" Melissa asked to her friends. "I regret nothing," Cora muttered with a smirk. "The dead regret nothing, Cora," was Melissa's less than encouraging reply, rubbing her nose bridge with her fingers. "Do you two have any idea what we might have missed? Put aside growing dark matter manipulating nodules, this was a chance to see if dark matter exists at all. You know those studies are more bare than the first 10 years of quirk emergence." Melissa snapped. "Imagine what we could have learned if you two could have kept at your damned pants for 2 more hours, she snapped. "But you're the one who told us to get a room," Michael replied. "Yes, get a room. One with a bed, maybe a small hotel, inconspicuous, not our lab, you dunce." "Twack. Ouch. Why you chopped me, woman?" "To see if I can beat that lesson in," Melissa replied, lowering her hand. "Also, you made me miss Miss Midoriya's cooking. She cooks divine. The last time I was there. Today was Jingisuken. You know I'm a sucker for lamb meat," Melissa snapped. We are 2 hours late. By this point Izuku must have another power-up. The only saving grace is that his S-watch is on record mode, so what happened to his body was recorded. Still, Melissa said as she took Cora's chair, she didn't trust those two. Weren't seated, naked, in her chair before, and Saturday. Sighing, Melissa again looked at her friends. "Look, I'm happy you two finally worked it out. The sexual tension was thick enough that I could cut it with a knife, a dull one at that. But honestly, you two could have picked a better time and place to do it," Melissa said sincerely, only for Cora and Michael to raise an eyebrow. Like you miss I banged a 3rd year in the broom closet." Cora's smug grin made Melissa grit her teeth in frustration. "Admit it, you're mad because you have a dry spell a year long." She didn't want to, but it was true. Her reputation as the golden child of the academy had pretty much nuked her sex life. Guys were intimidated by her reputation. Hell, she can't even get a date. Just hang out and eat something without the guy bailing on her at the last minute. It's not like she is actively looking for a bedmate, just some company, a healthy relationship. Is that much to ask? Apparently, yes. With a sigh, and mentally noting that she might need to replace her keyboard as well and clean her desk properly, Melissa booted her computer. "Well, what's done it's done. We missed something great. I missed food. And now you two are going to miss some extra shut-eye with me thanks to the stun you guys just pulled," Melissa stated. Cora and Michael wanted to argue, but thought against it. She was right, they owed her this much. As Melissa began to focus on the task at hand, she froze instantly. Not 5 seconds later, so did Cora and Michael. "Were you two working on something before you started your thirst?" Melissa asked, deadly serious. "No, we were just picking the gear for when you arrive, and then we got to argue, and then, well," Michael muttered. Yet his voice was as deadly serious as Melissa's was. "Mel, I know you don't like her, but call Jennifer, now. We need her, guys," Cora muttered as she began to work on her computer, Michael doing the same, and letting out a curse several seconds later. "Melissa, call Jennifer, call Caroline, now," Michael hissed. Someone tried to enter into the SHD-protected files, and they almost succeeded. Shigaraki grinded as he beheld at his new sidekicks. Partners in crime. Like-minded individuals. Whatever. His accomplices. That's what it was. Gathering these people hadn't been easy. Well, it began easy. Gadget had been easy enough to convince. He wanted change. Just like him, his methods varied. But the end goal was the same. Also, they needed someone who could build shit. He's all about Duran hooking them up with gear. But owing him grinded his gears. He wanted someone on-site capable of making them gear-suited for their needs. Gadget came highly recommended. Then came the second one, Mustard. His quirk, gas, allowed him to basically go midnight but on steroids, emitting a powerful sleeping gas substance. As much as he wants, he's prideful on what he has, also pragmatic. He has a freaking gun, believing that no matter the quirk, everyone is still human, and therefore, not bulletproof. Shigaraki already liked him. Mustard adhered to the function over style method. Gear can look like crap, but if works, it doesn't matter. He was the second easiest to convince, as he wanted to prove himself. The fact he seemed to be in high school didn't seem to bother him at all. Number 3 was a treat, a girl who already graduated from high school, but society had already labeled her as a villain for a small incident. Her name is Yuriko, a genuine Gyaru girl, blonde hair, girly dress, tanned skin. Her blue eyes were actually real, not contact lenses, and her quirk was something subtle, but useful. Rock joints. It allowed her to basically lock her joints in any position she wanted. If she held you in a hold, it would take someone with considerable strength to break of that hold, especially considering she is built like a damn brick house. She's huge, standing at a whooping 6.7 feet, 2 meters tall. If you get out of her holds, kudos to you. She got in because, well, a small incident labeled her as a villain. It ruined her life, so she wanted change, even if it meant violent change. She wasn't shy about what she wanted it, and how she wanted change to happen. He liked her. Number 4 was someone that took some convincing. Her name's Magna, a trans. Despite having a guy's body, Shigaraki doesn't care. He cares about reputation, and Magna's reputation preceded her. Murder, assault, theft. It would be simple crimes if it wasn't for the fact she has yet to be caught, and the murder part was mostly 2 heroes that had been cocky enough to fight her, and despite their superior training and quirks, failed. And the third murder, well, Magna does have a temper, is hard to make it surface, but when it does, well, let's just say that the heroes, while dead, died quick and painless deaths, compared to the idiot that pissed her off. Then there was Mr. Compress. He didn't know what to make of the man. He is first of all a nationwide wanted thief. At first he didn't want him. He needed brawn. But then he got wind of his quirk, Compress, and Shigaraki recruited him. But his attitude, Compress is an arrogant son of a bitch. He is also old, 30, maybe more, and so age carries experience. The man has done a lot of things, mostly theft and kidnapping. But because he is a showman at heart, most of his thefts are a spectacle. Hell, most of what he does is a spectacle, but Shigaraki will admit, the man know what he does, and he does his job well. Duran vouched for him. Then there was Twice. He cannot say he trusts Duran fully on this one, because the guy looks unstable, and this is coming from the guy with hands attached to his clothes. But Duran vouched for him. Twice had committed a huge amount of crimes before going silent. He knew how he carried several of them. His ability to clone pretty much anything he has an exact measure of, and can understand its function, is a versatile quirk to have. He could clone people as well, but the clones were fragile, but acted independent, which would help them greatly. And then he came to this too. These two gave him problems, Darby and Toga. Oh boy, talking about the duality of man. Darby is aloof, Toga is nuts and outspoken, but they have a rap sheet behind them. Again, Duran recommended them, and honestly, they were strong. Darby's quirk, cremation, was a super strong flame-based quirk. He should know, flames don't come out blue unless they are burning with enough power, and the horrible scars on him, and the patches of artificial skin hold together with staples, should be enough explanation as of how hot they burn, so hot that Shigaraki knows that whatever gets hit by them is going to receive third-degree burns on the get-go. Then there was Toga. He keeps his distance of her. As she keeps his distance of him, she knows his effective killing distance, and he knows her effective killing distance and her reaction speed. She reacted as fast as he does, despite the fact that she kills, not with her quirk, those fangs look sharp, but with knives, mostly kitchen knives that she sharpens herself, not military-kind knives with ridges that will cause more damage and stuff, and her quirk was kinder of a doozy. She called it transform. Ingesting blood of anyone, at least human, allowed her to take their form, their voice. She became a perfect infiltrator. The only downside was of course the amount of blood itself. For a full transformation, a glass of blood was more than enough to transform and sustain it for over 3 days if she wanted it. The new skin became a secondary armor that protected her, as much as a sweater protects someone of a punch. Also, she could not use their quirks because fuck him, he can't have a chameleon or vampire hybrid with extra powers. Convincing them had been a pain, especially considering that Darby had been present when the Colosseum had fell to the heroes and nearly got clipped by All Might himself. The promise of change was incredibly alluring to anyone who was tired of the current system. Darby and Toga had eventually joined him. But after 2 hours of fucking conversations, for fuck's sakes it felt like an amateur modder had nothing else to add but words and shit. It was agonizing. He got them. Still it felt like pulling fucking teeth, with nail clippers. The last person was someone Jiran had brought personally, a quirkless guy of all things. But then Jiran had dropped his name, or nickname, and Shigaraki had through any pretense of using the guy as a meat shield. The Jackal, that's his name, a certified badass. Whoever said quirks make you strong hasn't met the assassin of assassins, an animal with any gun put in his hands, has killed entire gangs out of vexation, wiped 2 criminal families in Matsu, each 50 strong. He wiped them off, alone. They had the police on their pockets, killed them too. By the end heroes had to step in. The Jackal killed 10 of them while blowing the police station, the mayor's hall, a school, and oddly enough a bakery that blew up harder than all the former places he blew up together. The fact he looked like an average Japanese businessman of the pre-Quirk era, slightly balding and hair brushed to the side to cover the baldness, slightly overweight and dressed sharply didn't help the image. Toga believed so. She tried to stab him. He pulled a fucking handgun before Toga had even pulled her knife out and shoved the gun right down her open mouth. Didn't said a word. The message was clear. She was dead wrong and also dead if she thought he was prey. No, she was the prey. No one commented on the fact that apparently, that had gotten her horny. Fucking Jiran could not have found a girl that wasn't part Yander and turn off by death threats. No, he found that ONE girl that get turn on by that shit. Typical Jiran. Shaking that thought away, Shigaraki focused on the group, all gathered in the bar. Kurogiri as usual was manning the bar, cleaning glasses. They had to lock the door and put off the closed sign because right before they could start a man had wandered in, pulled a fat stack of cash and told Kurogiri to give him a bottle of his strongest shit, hard enough to forget the weak, and that he has a liver, or kidneys. No one complained, especially considering he alleviated the tension on the room by that. Also because he left another fat stack of cash, to pay for everyone who wanted a drink. So here they were, drinking alcohol, or in his case, Gadgets and Togas, drinking soda, because he can't handle alcohol. Gadget's 10 and no one wanted to risk a drunk Toga, or a horny drunk Toga. Well, now that we are all here, let's begin. Shigaraki began, standing up. I gathered you all, with promise of change that we can make happen, but to do that we need equipment. Money's not an issue. Apparently Mr. Compress here has some plans. I can make them happen, as long as he tones down the flashiness. They require stealth. I cannot believe you don't want people to know you. You want to make change and yet you want to remain in the shadows, Philistine Compress muttered. Too soon, Shigaraki replied. Last thing we want is the heroes on our tail. Right now they are on a rampage. We give them a reason to fight us. They'll come in numbers. It won't be just All Might or Endeavor. Try at least the top 20 and the cops and probably a tank. They are not fucking around with the troop. We shouldn't think they won't do the same to us if we give them a reason to, Shigaraki stated, which brought nods around. Besides, this is a great way to start our partnership, by stealing the troops' shit. Wait, what? Everyone that wasn't Gadget asked in shock. It made him grin under his mask hand. Yep, thanks to some last-minute acquisitions, namely the head of the son of the mayor of Musutafu. You know him, that cop guy that the cops wanted to shoot. Everyone nodded, not sure how to take the fact he has the head of Honda lying around. We got some juicy info, alongside money. We raided so many bank accounts. We also got the location of several bases the troop has, Shigaraki said, reaching to a TV set and turning it on. And we found the perfect target. See this? Shigaraki said with a grin at the image on the TV screen. That's a warehouse, the Jackal spoke. On Sea Gaia, on the coasts, visited the area once, he said. Yes, this particular one has an unique reputation. You see, it seems abandoned, but reality is that the troop has men inside of it, underground. They have a massive complex there. You know what they have there? Bows. Toga wondered, intrigued in some aspect. She found the liquors cute. Better, the means on how they make them. You see, the troupe is able to mass-produce bows at a scale that most would salivate. The thing is how. A friend of mine says they are clones, modified on the womb to ensure maximum stat rolls, to have what they want, not to risk it to luck. He deduced they must have special machinery to ensure that these things are combat-ready in such a short time. I want them. He wants them to make his own bows. Darby scoffed. Excuse me, but I fought some of those. They are strong, yes, perturbing as fucking Malboros, but why we would want bows, he added. Oh, I don't want bows, Shigaraki said as he snapped his fingers. In an instant a portal formed behind him and a Nomu lumbered by. Its unnatural bulk made everyone tense. Already have my own, but it pains me to admit it. Their shit is better. If we can get our hands on those things, we can refine the creation of the Nomus, streamline it, make them better. Change requires muscle. We lack it. So I'm going to make my own muscle, and flex it, Shigaraki stated. So, what do we expect there? Bullshit, I assume. Twice remarked. Shigaraki considered the question. It was valid, and so was the asna Twice gave. Maybe, but the one thing I can tell you all, Shigaraki said with a grin. They are expendable. They cross us. We stomp them. There were some murmurs of approval at the plan. Still, Gadget began. We need a more solid plan. They could have T-dolls there. That place could be a shipping yard for all we know, and by accident we could cause a bow outbreak. We need to know more before we storm the castle, and also know about each other. We need to know each other to this to come without a hitch, lest the heroes do find out about it. Remember, they are operating against the troupe. They see us there, we are collateral, Gadget stated. I thought of that. There is a reason I selected Seagaia. They are yet to move there. After Raxus they are mobilizing city after city, town after town. Once liberated, their forces divide to reinforce other forces, acting like a disease, spreading. It is effective, but slow. Seagaia is a target they are yet to reach. So, we move before they do, Shigaraki stated. This seemed to satiate Gadget's anxiety. So, any questions? Shigaraki asked. Yes, the Jackal said, looking at a part of the bar. How's 9? That seemed to puzzle everyone but Shigaraki, who wanted to murder the Jackal for that question. Shigaraki hated that smug motherfucker of 9. He is recovering. Jackal, everyone stiffened, looking at where the Jackal was looking, and nearly having a seizure when they saw the shadows covering someone. The shadows seemed alive, keeping the identity of whoever spoke concealed. Sensei, Shigaraki spoke. Shigaraki, I approve of the people you brought in. They have potential, and Jiran found Jackal. It's been a while, hasn't it? When was the last time we met? Yokohama, 40 years ago. We drank sake and you then took the quirk of the bartender. Now everyone was tense. Was the shadow man really the Kappa? And he knew the Jackal. Ah yes, that was quite a night. Heard about your exploits too, the Jackal merely grunted. Gotten sloppy with age. That fuck-up shouldn't had occurred. Ended up outing myself. My offer still stands. You're a friend and an asset I don't want to lose. Sorry, the Jackal smiled a smile that made Gadget hide behind toga. I'm old enough to know when I'm making a deal with the devil. I think this will be a good way to retire from blowing shit up. An impossible job against the troupe. Then, I don't know, become a consultant of these people. Seems like a good way of keeping up with the time without looking over my shoulder and killing anyone that looks me funny. Ammo doesn't come cheap, All for One chuckled. It made everyone but Shigaraki and the Jackal tense. It was like hearing the Reaper laugh at a joke only he knew. Good. Also, Shigaraki, one more thing. You'll need to make some modifications on your plan, like. Mustard muttered. Then he felt the gaze of All for One fall on him, and he felt like turning his gun on himself just to escape the gaze of the cryptid. A very simple one, Mustard Kuan, All for One began. I'm going with you all on this one. Woo. I knew my family genetics was going to screw someone in the future, Hisoshi muttered, looking at his recovered, albeit a little pale, son. But I had no idea how bad they would. The troupe, you are right now, an enemy of the troupe, and apparently every gang member in Musutafu, Hisoshi muttered, eating on his food, that he had made for everyone. That comment didn't pass away as Inko and Izuku looked at the man oddly. What do you mean? Izuku asked. You never told him. Hisoshi asked Inko, who only shook her head. Good grief, Inko, I love you, but damn it, he sighed. You see, son, my family, our side had 2 mutations that didn't fit the bill of the usual quirks. They were adaptable, like really adaptable, which I assume is why your body can adapt so fast to the changes. I mean, you did just say you grew nodes in your nervous system. That's something that most quirk users can't do. One of my ancestors could, to an extent, manipulate his genetic makeup, adapt to certain conditions. I think that's why after them the rest of us could breathe fire so easily without ending up with charred lips, or mouth, or anything else, to be honest, Hisoshi stated, which seemed to make Inko perk up. Well, now that you mention it, my family had some black sheeps. Aside from me, one could create hard light constructs. The other could manipulate all sorts of energies as long he understood them, including nuclear kind, and use them to infuse himself with energy. Both died, the first during the Osaka riots. And well, we never knew what happened to great-great-great-grandfather Ryu, only that he died. But how we didn't knew, Inko said, looking at her husband. You don't think Hisoshi sighed. Miko-chan, show them your quirk. Tone it down please, the girl nodded, extending her right arm and this one slowly emitting heat from it, distorting the area around it. As you know, her mother wasn't all clear on her name, but on her quirk she was more than clear. She called it napalm hands. Each limb expels a different substance that when combined ignite and make natural napalm. You know my quirk, fire breath, breathe fire. She thought that combining the two would allow Miko-chan to breathe. Napalm, Hisoshi bitterly explained, then smiled smugly. 4 years later I find Miko-chan actually cooking an egg on her hand. Turns out she can emit heat from her hands and legs, either using her own body heat as a source of energy, kinetic movement, or simply drawing heat from other sources, and she can actually narrow the heat to make blades out of heat on her limbs, but it takes a lot of concentration. We call it heat sink, Hisoshi said. That's a mutation of a quirk if I ever seen one. Izuku Kuin's is a more extreme version, Hisoshi said, seeing how his son was actually fanboying over his daughter's quirk. That's so amazing. What's your limit of heat? Can you actually make blades that extend from your hands? Can you propel yourself using heat alone? He asked with an eager smile, one that got bigger as he extended his hand and somehow summoned a small, but on fire hammer and extended it to Miko. Can you take the heat of the hammer of Sol? Miko seemed overwhelmed by all, especially by the heat emoted by the hammer of Sol. A small quantity, really small, like how much heat that thing produces. Well, I wield the undying fury of 1,000 suns, so Izuku let that sentence hang. My brother is such a badass, Miko muttered, then turned to Eri with a smile. Our brother is such a badass, she said with a grin, one that Eri tried to mimic, but then relented and just nodded. And I have such a cute sister, Miko added. She's so cute I could die. Please don't, Eri muttered as Miko hugged her and rubbed cheeks with her. Eri realized there that while Miko's arms were unusually hot, the rest of her wasn't. But she absorbs the heat from her arms and legs, not the rest of her body, so most of the time she is either wearing skirts or shorts or t-shirts, no gloves because leather gets super uncomfortable when heated, and the rest of her can't get heated like her limbs, Hisoshi commented. Also, she has a limit on how much heat she can take before her limbs begin to overheat. She hasn't gone to that point, but considering what she wants to be, well, Hisoshi let the sentence hang. Izuku and Inko knew well enough what he meant. Miko wanted to be a hero, and with a quirk like hers it was obvious she could do it. She had been obviously practicing, not enough to end up scarring her limbs, but enough to know what to and what not to do. So, the troop, Yakuza, and apparently the gangs of Musutafu, and you're here because A, your quirk is so weird that it needs to be researched, B, you're key witnesses that can end up causing the downfall of every no gang in the city, and C, this also means that the troop, who has confirmed ties with these gangs, want you both death, right? Izuku and Inko nodded at Hisoshi's summarization of what had happened to them so far as they ate their food. Okay, I'ma go get the gasoline to burn them. Dad, no. Dad, yes. There's no need, Hisoshi, Inko said. Seeing her husband about to retort, she rose her hand. The heroes have been attacking troop warehouses and bases all over Japan. At this point they are crippled. Defeated? No, but they are feeling the hurt. By the time we have to return to Japan for the trials, well then the troop is gonna be in a worse state than they are now, Inko stated. Trust me on this, Hisoshi. We are okay. Listen to Miko-chan and don't go setting people on fire, Inko muttered the last part. Honestly, she felt weird by saying that after so long. He said the same when her parents had left their home after their visit. Is not that he is a pyromaniac, is just that he is a living lighter, so he gets the idea that intimidating someone by setting them on fire usually works. So Izuku steered the conversation this time, not wanting to hear his father about setting people on fire, despite the fact he can melt people's skin if he wants to. What now? What's next? Izuku whispered. He still felt pain after the ordeal of pretty much growing nodes all over his entire nervous system, and is sure he's gonna feel it tomorrow, not now, but he still had energy to eat and ask some question. Also, he has healing powers, so he might be able to mitigate the pain, might. Well, Hisoshi begins. To be honest, I don't know. Baby steps, I think. I want to be on your lives. The only way that's gonna happen is, well, going back to Japan. But there's an issue. And no is not the troop. It's my position in my job, Hisoshi said. Well, more like my and the rest position on the job. We are understaffed. We are working on fumes. We are getting some leeway in a couple of weeks. Thank God. And several of them are veterans that know the job. If I want a transfer, I will have to train a replacement and pass a note asking for my eventual transfer in Musutafu. There is a subsidiary there that needs manpower and experience. I can provide both, but all that takes time. At least 2 months after you guys return to Japan. If I send the papers now. So yeah, there's that, Hisoshi said. Inko and Izuku looked at one another, then looked back at Hisoshi. Like you said, Hisoshi, baby steps, one at a time. What matters now is that we are all here, together, Inko said, looking at everyone. Then, Eri spoke. So, I have a sister. Oh. Miko perked up at that. Then that means she's my mom now, right? She said as she pointed at Inko with a smile, yet Izuku could see the mischievous and some sort of longing look she had when she said those words. Again, mother and son looked at each other. Then Hisoshi glanced a glance with them, seeing the hopeful looks Miko and Eri were giving them, especially to Inko and himself. Again, baby steps. First we date. Then we see how things go from there on out. The two girls nodded, hoping for the best, all while Izuku gave his parents a look, all while mother and father were giving 2 dates and they are going to be okay with each other, Izuku thought to himself, seeing how his parents were giving each other sidelong glances at one another. He had seen it enough times back at school on boys and girls on dates, all longing and stuff. He hoped he would get something like that in the future. 3 days later, another day at school had ended, and Izuku had decided to head to Melissa's lab. He hadn't seen her in a while, and it was concerning that she wasn't present when he acquired his biotics, and the day after that when Dr. Wu Ying studied him and scanned his bodies for anomalies after his new power-up, only finding the new Izo nodes now dotting every single nerve he had. Also, the good doctor had gotten samples of dark energy and its manipulation. Apparently it was a very limited field of study, and as such very few people how it worked, and if existed at all, the very fact that Izuku could use it, manifest it, prove it existed, as much of its studies were put on halt when Quirk appeared and stopped altogether after NASA and other space agencies were shut down to divert funds to their respective countries to handle the emergence of Quirks. Only the field was being retaken by Island, and even then they had little to work on. So he had called the other doctors to share the discoveries and see what they could glean of what he had undergone and what he knew about what he had gained. As he told them, he pretty much gained the ability to manipulate mass effect fields. In a nutshell, manipulate gravity fields. Somewhat, he could increase and decrease the mass of an object he had affected with his biotics and either launch it at great speed with reduced mass or simply attract them to himself. At its most basic, the most advanced versions allowed him create gravitational distortions and render molecules apart. Also to create a shield around himself or form a small shield in his arm to deflect attacks, jump higher, the works. There was one little detail he had to mention. Biotics oftentimes required training, lots of it, and an implant, because most times brains don't send the necessary impulse for the Izo nodes to fire up, and also training, a lot of training. Basically it was like learning to walk. Again, as the training required that some biotic attacks to have a nervous response to a certain movement of the body, setting yourself to tackle someone can, for a biotic, be the first step to set up a biotic charge. As the neurons need to be fired in a certain sequence, only achievable after repetitive training. After that he had decided to postpone his meeting with Melissa, mostly because he had to figure out how much biotic potential he had. Turns out he has a lot, but there was the issue of the amps, which limited him. Right now he could just manifest the aura of a biotic around his hands and body, and use a small biotic pull on objects that was just 2 feet away from him. Anything beyond that gave him a headache. Using arc energy around him actually increased his limit from 2 feet to 20, a huge improvement, but he was saving that for emergency reasons, because obviously he needed to grow first his base power then mix and match. He was afraid that at one point all powers would make him think that all problems were to be fixed by pretty much unleashing hell. He had to remind himself of that, so when all this ends, he can focus on one power at a time, to train them and truly understand them, so he can use them in conjunction better. After all this acquisition of power had begun to flesh out, to not over-specialize. Reaching Melissa's lab, he saw the door was closed. As usual, with a small smile he brushed his S-watch on the sensor and the door opened. Melissa-san, I am so SOR what? Jennifer Walters, I am going to kill you. Melissa, for fuck's sakes, don't strangle her. Yeah, we don't have a place to hide the body. Izuku was caught in a rather shocking scene, seeing Melissa, sweet, happy-go Melissa, trying to strangle Jennifer, the girl who Melissa had said, pretty much had slept with every single person on her labs, and Melissa's friends, trying to stop her, failing spectacularly. He saw Cora's hair, tied in thick braids wrapped around Melissa's arms, all while Michael was trying to pry her fingers from Jennifer's neck. Izuku didn't had to wait before he was enveloped in an azure corona of energy and closed in, reaching on and enveloping Melissa's hand. Then yanking onward, he was able to pry the limb. Melissa-san, behave, damn it, Izuku said as he let his biotics die out, and soon the attention was on him, making him blush. Melissa regarded Izuku, then sighed. Sorry, but again, she grinds my gears something fierce, she stated as she turned around. Jennifer just grinded. Oh, I want to grind something all right, Melissa just huffed harshly as she turned around and pointed a finger at Jennifer. She wanted to say something, but relented, then turned to Izuku, grabbing him by the shoulders and turning him around. You guys finish up here. Izuku heroes me an exposition of biotics on the obstacle course, Melissa said as she pushed the greenite away of the lab and directed him away. All the while the group inside the lab gave each other wary glances. After a while, Melissa had guided Izuku out of the facilities and into what seemed an artificial training ground, barren of most but rocks of all sizes and formations, surely to resemble some sort of natural obstacle course or demolition course. Okay, what the heck was that? You were strangling Walters-san, Izuku asked. She ran her mouth a little too much and I decided to apply the handbrakes, Melissa answered with a cheery look, one that didn't sold Izuku at all. Rolling her eyes, she answered again. Okay, she made some lewd comments about me, Michael and Cora. She thinks that everyone else is having sex like we were back in Quirk emergence days. Does she think everything is related to SSCX? Izuku shuttered the last part, something Melissa noted. Yeah, again she has this view that the world should have, not just her, Melissa said, then clapped her hands together. But enough about that. You're here to show me your biotics. I got cheated thanks to Cora and Michael, messing around. But not today. Show me what you got, she said, pulling a tablet from somewhere and engaging its camera. You're going to be disappointed, Izuku plainly replied, only to see Melissa roll her eyes. Izuku, you and I both know that without biotic amps your biotics will be weak. The best I expect is some light show and some short-range pulls, not singularities and pulling 3-ton rocks from the ground. We talked about this. This is a test run. Besides, she called off. Why we have to operate when we can make a headband that can work better than opening a hole in the back of your head and jamming tech. Modern problems oftentimes require simple solutions, not complicated ones, she quoted. Izuku nodded at her logic. And you're kinda right, he said as he lit up his body in a biotic aura and pulled a small rock the size of his hand just a feet away of him, and catching it. But remember, Melissa-san, the amps increase the neural response, the electrical response, he said as he exploded in arc energy. Levitating off the ground, he held his hand. And this time a rock bigger than his torso was enveloped in an azure aura and ripped from the ground and shot to him, stopping mere feet away of him and levitating in front of him. Just add arc energy and I got a boost, almost like red sand, but without being addictive, he said with a small smile. Indeed, she said as she recorded the whole affair. Looks like Hacks did its thing again. You haven't had any kind of physical mnemonic training, but you can use pull with ease. Try push using arc, Melissa suggested. Izuku nodded, and after taking a deep breath, did as told, making the motion for push. Instantly the rock was fired at great speed. Crack! The rock cracked upon impact onto another rock. Melissa nodded at that result. Again, Hacks did its job. It trained you to use the biotics, bypassing years of training. Of course there's the issue you mentioned. With arc you pretty much are an exceptional biotic, but without arc light your potential diminishes. Yet I feel you can do more than most biotics without an amp in their heads. You pulled my arm at what, 2 feet of distance? He nodded. Good, I think you should practice without arc light. Focus on getting a hang on everything. You used Andromeda, right? Izuku again nodded. It has a more complete line of biotics and you don't have to repeat the game too much to get everything out. Lacks some powers from the main trilogy, but they make it up with extra mobility and oh. She suddenly perked up. Please tell me you can do the biotic dash. That's so cool to do, she asked. I haven't tried it. I think it will too much for me, but I'll try, Izuku called. Just because you asked nicely, he called back. I'll have some aspirins for you if you pull your brain off doing it, she teased. One day, I swear, One day I'll have my revenge, Izuku muttered, suddenly blurring in an azure corona and appearing half a feet away from where he was, then shaking his head after that. Okay, that felt weird, Izuku muttered. Half a feet of distance, how do you feel? Melissa asked to the slightly stunned Izuku. I feel dizzy, like if I was exposed to those Quirk hampering lights at the Colosseum again, but more like a huge flash in a second and then nothing else, Izuku explained. Doesn't feel like blink. He shook his head at her question. So, while it is spatial like blink, it seems it doesn't seem to have the same safe mechanisms. There is preparation before blink occurs. Even Nova Warp has the same effect. This doesn't seem the case with the biotic sidestep. Izuku looked at her after that. Yeah, we are calling it that. Get used to it, she said with a small grin. Okay, let's see what else you can do. Okay. Then we can call it a day. He nodded as he began to see what he could do. It was a welcome distraction. After that debacle, Melissa listened to reason. No, Jennifer, what you're suggesting is there's evidence. Circumstantial. Still evidence. Michael found passcodes, administrative passcodes. Only the board has them. 12 people has them. Not you, not Michael nor Cora, the creators of the SHD network, but the board. Your dad is on the board as well. One more word, Melissa. We have to accept the possibility, even as small as it can be, that one of the members of the board is a traitor, that tried to access sensitive files that only the owners can access to, protected by the network and encrypted to ensure no one but the owners can use them. Still can't explain how they did it. This is why I think your dad might be part of it. Jennifer, one more word, suggesting that my dad is a sellout, I swear. He is the only member of the board smart enough and with the technical know-how to do anything of this caliber. He also has access to the tech and Melissa frowned at that memory, mostly because she had started to strangle Jennifer for suggesting that. And 2 seconds later Izuku had entered the lab and prevented it from going further. Honestly, she was thankful for his intervention. Things might have escalated if Jennifer continued on her accusations, while baseless, did have some shred of truth. Someone had tried to sidestep the security protocols of the SHD network. The users had to protect their files. Not even the board had direct access to the files unless permitted by the users of such files. It was a double-layered defense in case someone high on the chain tried something like that. But the fact remained, someone had tried to access such files, to steal them, using the codes of the board, including her father's own code. That alone raised alarms in her head. Someone had the codes, and while the SHD network was, by design, created to prevent anyone who wasn't the user to do something like abusing their status to break in, Island had other places where those codes could work. The worst part was that they could not know who had been the culprit, as the codes were mixed in together, all jammed in an attempt to confuse the network, or confuse them. And as she saw Izuku blur around, using his biotics without arc energy, she had the feeling that it might had worked a little too well. 2 weeks later. You're asking too much. Am I? Must remind you it was you who proposed us. I just proposed an idea. You wanted more. I fail to see how this is our fault when it was you who made the action. Melissa and her team already went to the board with their findings. The board pretty much gave them their access codes to check who was the leak. The moment they find it wasn't one of them, I'll turn into a witch hunt. Pretty bold of them to do that. Surely it was Melissa trying to clean her father of any doubt that he might be the leak. Poor girl. Poor, stupid girl. So predictable. She'll jump the shark in order to help her father, not knowing what might lie on the other side. Yeah, well, stupid or not, it did its purpose. Right now every single project is being reviewed. The SHD network is being reinforced. It will be harder to orchestrate another attack without cluing them of my identity. Not our problem. You are the one who asked for this. You're the one who said I can do it. Don't complain because the work is now hard. Don't come to me with that drivel. You strong-armed me. I did not. You bended once the prospect of money and freedom of the troop came knocking at your door. Yet you ask me to do something that failed 10 years ago, a mere step back, one that can initiate an international query on the way your government does business. Remember China when Quirks appeared. The Quirks tore the government to pieces. The UN tore any hope they had to stonewall any investigation regarding crimes against humanity by using their connections. It can happen to your government if this comes out to light. Island is cherished worldwide as a beacon of progress. Imagine the damage if the world learns that a single nation tried to leash that progress to themselves. Let's make one thing clear. The world can throw a temper tantrum for all I care if they learn it. My loyalties are to my nation. If I have to break Island legs to ensure that my nation prosper, so be it. And I will make the world watch it so they learn a lesson. Progress at any cost. You're asking for trouble, that's what I think. But nevertheless, You still haven't gained access to the vault. Is not that simple. I had David's ear for a time, and he was on board. But then All Might came and he no longer is on board. In fact, he reinforced the security measures on the vault. Intel never specified why he made it to Island. Clarify, I don't know either. It's all hush-hush, like high level, I'm road-blocked. Even more so, there has been some extreme advancements in several fields. There are now studies in genetics that weren't considered and in energy fields, studies that frankly scare me. One of those studies is being considered for the upgrade on the island energy grid. A considerable 1 inch. There was silence. He hated the silence. I don't like this. We have tried to achieve progress on such fields, and now you tell me they are progressing at an alarming rate. After All Might's arrival, your mission stands. Find a way into the vault, take the Quirk enhancer and deliver it to us at the accorded date. Oh, so easy to say. Why don't you try to be helpful for once? I am pretty much breaking the law. They find out. Jail will be the least of my concerns. There's a reason Island has 0 criminality rate. No one commits crimes here because the law here is harsh. Already thought of that. In a week's time a package will arrive at your location. In it we send a small container with a syringe in it. Use it on someone, anyone when you feel you need to create a distraction. But you must get to the vault. You must get the enhancer out and to us. I'll see what I can do. I'll be hard. David up the security. Inconsequential. You do as told, nothing else. Get the enhancer. Get the files. Break the network in any way you can. We cannot allow Island to continue gavelating without control. Have all that by the time of the deadline. No more delays. Fine. But don't back on the deal. After this I will be wanted by Island authorities. I want full pardon and immunity in your country. This is serious. Serious enough to involve extradition and Interpol, especially considering that my actions could be called terrorism. Just ensure I get what I want and you get what you want. Good. We're getting somewhere. Also, keep an eye on the news in the next 3 days. You'll see we are good on our word. Oh, I know. I just dread how you're going to make good on it 3 days later. Island sub-level 1. You're going to love this, Izuku, Melissa called, looking behind her and seeing Izuku, Cora, and Michael behind her. Today was a day that she had been expecting and somewhat dreading. Rest, an enforced one to her because on how much she worked, by her dad, especially after the SHD incident, while it was unresolved, as there was no clue on who had tried to force his or her way into the network. The main suspects, according to Jennifer, were cleared out. It made more of a mess considering that someone was walking with the access codes of the board. Therefore it had access to nearly anything within Island. But now she could at least know that her dad wasn't a leak, or anyone on the board for that matter. But the matter remained. So, what are we doing here? Melissa had wanted this to be a more teenage-related outing, but the moment Hisoshi had heard the words sub-level 1 he had pretty much dragged everyone else into this, but for different reasons. First off, she was surprised that Izuku's father was on the island, or that he worked here at all. She knew the name was familiar to her, and after learning who he was, she knew why. The fact that Izuku didn't went thermonuclear on the revelations he learned still surprised, or the fact Inko didn't gutted Hisoshi at all. Maybe it had to do with the fact he manned up and confronted the situation in a logical way and not lost his shit, and also the fact the people he spoke to were logicalish and wanted an explanation as well. Or maybe because Izuku learned he had a half-sister and Inko learned her husband had been deadly afraid of the hypothetical consequences to his family if they learned of what had happened. Whatever the case, seeing him alongside Inko, Izuku, and Eri had not been odd, or the fact he and Miko seemed to spend more time with them in their sparely decorated apartment than on their own, or the fact he was planning to move back to Japan for his family but due to logistics he wouldn't be able to leave with them. Nope, the fact that he had never went to the sub-level 1 had been the most surprising part of the whole ordeal, despite living in the island for the past 10 years. The sub-levels, despite their technical name and association, were in fact an entire botanist district, or better said an entire recreation center. Island had 20 sub-levels, only one was accessible by the civilians. Sub-level 1, also known as Neon Sector, focused solely in recreation, games, karaokes, restaurants. Hell, it had a mall and a theater, and yes, the upper levels had the same. The difference was that sub-level 1 was the oldest recreation sector on the island, created after Island became independent, and most scientists there yearned for greasy, unhealthy, or otherwise unconventional food. The restaurants created there were thematic depending of the nation: Colombian lunches, Argentinian barbecue grills, Jamaican fruit shacks, British pubs, American hamburgers, Japanese sushi joints. You could literally had a craving for Korean food, and odds are there is a restaurant That'll cover that craving. There were also arcades of all sorts, stores of all kinds. You want a distraction of the hustle above. Neon Sector has it. She had brought Izuku initially because she had heard about a tournament nearby, considering the stress she had been subjected after the SHD incident and pretty much working with Izuku regarding his biotics. She thought it would be a good idea to distress in it. It has been a while she had gone to a local tournament. Then Cora and Michael wanted to tag along, mostly because they wanted to tease her about a date. She loves her friends, but they obviously do not know her tastes. Izuku is adorable, like a small gerbil, a small, homicidal, puffy capable of tapping into unnatural forces and capable of melting your skin off gerbil. As a friend she appreciated him deeply, always bouncing ideas with her. He doesn't know that most of her new projects are now active because of him and his intervention, but as boyfriend material she doesn't see him as such. First is like that brother she always wanted, a small brother that understands her. Second, she likes her men beefy, blonde and taller than her. Yes, she does realize that she might be projecting a little too much of Uncle Might on that. But she also wants a man that can make her laugh and honestly can pin her to a wall, kiss her soul out and make her forget that she is Melissa Shield, a genius and inventor, and make her feel like Melissa the woman, without an ounce of shyness. Izuku is smart, yes, makes her feel secure, but he's insecure about himself. She can see it. The only reason he can talk to her is because she places herself in a level he feels comfortable, a friend and an inventor, never pushing out the fact she's a girl. He said it himself, girls didn't pay him much attention, so he became shy whenever a girl approaches him. Then Hisoshi had heard her plans, and had dragged the family to have a get-together in a restaurant nearby. After Izuku's tournament, he apparently wanted to cover 10 years of not being there, like hard, as Izuku told her. Hisashi and Inko pretty much dated on a daily basis, hangouts eating somewhere else, and she is damn sure they are having sex because they are adults, married and haven't had physical contact for the past 10 years. With Izuku it was pretty much being there, actually encouraging him to do his best, which seemed to do wonders on him. Last session with his biotics Izuku did a charge, the first he had done without using his arc energy. Am I? Izuku asked with a small smile. Yep, heard of this a couple days ago. The prize is actually tangible, not a trophy, but something special all the same. It aligns to your goals, Melissa said. But don't think I'll make it easy. I'm planning to join too, need to de-stress, and can't think of a better way to. Cora and Michael gave each other exasperated looks, all while Inko held Eri and Miko's hands as they traveled around Neon Sector. It wasn't long that after passing several stores with neon signs, and Izuku resisted the urge to drain some neon as well, they make it to one of the stores. It had a sign that showed a pair of swords crossing one another. Well, swords being a technical word, it was more like a chains word against a lightsaber, but the point still stood up. Entering the store, the group was immediately besieged by blasting music. An angry beat car Ian Tuck, loud, Eri muttered as she snuggled on Inko's side with a frown on her face. With a hand motion, Melissa pointed at a gathering of teens and a person working on a tablet. That's our stop. Make yourself comfortable, and don't think badly about me, Melissa said as she dragged Izuku with her to the gathering, leaving the group, especially the adults, wondering why she said that. 15 minutes later, Inko found strange that there were adults seated alongside them. Most of them looked like members of scientific teams, not hardcore gamers or family members of the participants. They looked more like spectators, wanting to see something else but numbers, formulas, and equations. Weird, isn't it? Cora muttered at her side. First time Mel brought us here I couldn't see half of the people seated her as spectators, but they are here to take some time off, is like seeing a soccer game, Cora stated. Wonder what game will be this time. Last tournament was 3 months ago, and was a Call of Duty free-for-all. Melissa there participated and won an actual replica of one of the characters' uniforms, Cora said with a small smirk. She hated it because it was more for a guy than a girl, shush. It's starting, Michael said, pointing at the screen where Inko could see her son alongside Melissa, and the entrance of a man dressed formally. Ladies, gentlemen, welcome, he began. Every year, to the dot, we celebrate this tournament. 37 souls inscribe themselves in this, the most ruthless of tournaments that mark the beginning of the season, and we do so with style. 37, he pointed at the teens and odd adult in the group. No pre-selection, those who enter do so knowing full well that each one of their opponents is their equal. 37 enter. Just one will claim the prize and glory. Among them is 3-year in a row champion, Melissa. Shield. The image zoomed on Melissa's face. Veterans like Duran Duarte and Alphonse Medici. This time the image focused on 2 adults, although Inko used the term adult loosely. They looked on their 20s. Or newcomers like Sansa Maria de la Rosa and first-time participant, and our first foreign participant, Izuku Midoriya. The image of her son was focused alongside the one of a girl that barely reached his chest. So without further ado, I give you our host, he said, pointing at a forming hologram, the image of a Chinese-looking ancient man, clothes and all. It was a living cliché of the Chinese wise men. Welcome warriors, the ancient man said, separating his arms and a gong sounding on the distance. Welcome to Mortal Kombat chapter end notes. So, what do you think? The board is set for the last part of the Island arc. To those who thought Hisoshi was the Trojan, I was saving that little twist. There are, and I kid you not, enough Hisoshis and asshole fix that I just grew tired of them. Eventually, I decided to try another approach, the good father. Honestly, it was fun writing Hisoshi in that regard, makes it more flexed out as a character. Also, there were teasers from what comes ahead, with Beyond Light being literally 13 days away from this publication. I wanted to give a tease on how Izuku would tap into it, by accident, and how he might tap into it consciously. Consider stasis as his ace on his sleeve. Beyond that, I'm gonna rest for a week before continuing writing the next chapter. I am mopping out several challenges in Destiny 2 and finishing up several games. I do not joke. I went on a bendit and bought several games and even haven't started playing them yet. I come from work exhausted, not physically, but mentally. Things are getting hard here, so I'm getting stressed out, and I shouldn't by logic, but still. Anyway, I wish you all a good weekend, and a tame Halloween celebration. Like really tame. Watch yourselves out there. HYPN0S out. Chapter Summary Selection. The last halcyon days come to a close, as everything comes into place, and the stage is set. Chapter Notes. Guess who's back? Happy 2021. Very late 2021, HYPN0S here, with yet another chapter of Hack. Now I owe you all some explanation as of why this chapter took so long. Well, first off, I wanted to see how the canon of My Hero Academia progressed. And boy does it progress. December was a bitch to me, work was tiring, so much that I literally had no energy to write more than 2 paragraphs. I was mentally drained, emotionally drained. The pandemic is finally starting to take its toll on me on a mental level. I got used to the idea it would last a long time, but the constant reminder exhausted me. I was this close of attacking my coworkers if they say, next year this pandemic is going to end, as a joke. No, it's not a fucking joke, it's fucking reality, and I'm about to shove my foot up to my knee up to your ass if you say it one more time. And 2021, it had 5 good days before everything went to shit. Thanks a lot, capital assholes, for killing my hope of a semi-normal year. On the plus side, vaccines. Rain to keep everyone inside in my country, and the fact I have at least 5 games that I can play from beginning to end and are so long that their year might go away, if. Anyway, we are going to have words regarding the current state of My Hero Academia, also why this chapter is so short compared to other chapters, and to those who worried I might have gotten COVID or gotten sick by anything else, I'm okay. Don't worry, I take care of myself. Despite working on a job that requires constant contact with clients, I wear a mask, I keep my distance, and my ever-growing grumpiness and desire to maul the next person that asks me if I'm okay keeps them at bay. Yay? So, without further delay, the next chapter, my friends. You waited long enough for it. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter 13. Selection. Inko had never been in a stadium. The closest she had been was during the sport festivals on her former school. Those days, when the crowd would shout in glee at a victory, did not really stack up to what was happening right now. Finish him. Over 100 souls cried in joy, including herself, as she saw her son's character, a ninja called Sub-Zero, basically turn him enemy, a superstar character named Johnny Cage, into an ice cube and then decapitate it with an ice axe, then take the head, freeze it and punch it into small bits. With a grin that matched his son's on screen as he lifted his controller in victory, Inko turned and smooched a shocked Hisoshi. His on the finals, she cried in joy, all while Hisoshi looked somewhat shocked at what had happened. Not the violence. The fact his wife pretty much shoved her tongue on his mouth was still something she did when they got amorous during their last parts of their dates. And Izuku Midoriya becomes the first foreign to make it to the finals. De La Rosa can't believe it but accepts her defeat with grace. Indeed. It's also the first time in 3 years someone with Sub-Zero makes it to the finals. Indeed. Last one was the former champion. He mained Sub-Zero. But for the finals decided to main another character in that tournament. Some say it costed him the finals against S.H.I.E.L.D. Regardless, here he is. The second finalist, Midoriya, will face current champion S.H.I.E.L.D. in the finals. We will take a 5-minute break before the final. Inko slightly smiled as she looked at her family. Honestly, this was a good distraction. and a way to spend time together as a family. Things with Hisoshi had been going well, as well they can be, considering that the first week they spent together was pretty much date with a finish in a love hotel and pretty much letting loose 10 years of pent-up emotions, over and over, and no one can really blame her for it, or him for that matter. They just lost themselves in one another. Then there was Miko. At first, okay, she can't lie, the girl is blameless for has happened so far. The fact she pretty much latched to her and began calling her mum was a dead giveaway that Miko yearned for a mother, and one that wasn't a complete cunt. And Inko was somewhat glad for Miko herself. She wasn't a brat or entitled. In fact, she was normal, or as normal you can be when your quirk ends up a mutation and your daddy's little girl. Eri seemed to take on Miko pretty well, and the constant hugging. It seemed Miko realized that Eri needed hugs. Like constant hugs, she hugged Eri anytime she could, and showered Eri with praises, and rubbed cheeks like crazy. Miko usually called Eri her cute marshmallow sister, which was one of her favorite compliments, alongside unicorn sibling and brokenly powerful and cute, which oddly enough, were all accurate. "Look, it's starting," Miko said with a grin, one that Eri mimicked but was less toothy, considering that the tournament was pretty violent. She saw someone's half-body being used as a ventriloquist dummy, and considering Eri's life prior to them, well, it was obvious this might be hitting too close to home. Soon the screen lit with life. In the room where the final round would occur sat 2 flat screens and 2 consoles. 2 controllers sat on the consoles. She easily recognized the one of her son. Part of the tournament requirement was to bring their own controllers and their profiles. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the finals. 37 souls came in. Only one will come out as the champion of Mortal Kombat." "Does he really need to shout like that?" Hisoshi asked. "Yep, is pretty much custom by now. Better be prepared. By the end everyone screams," Michael said with a grin. "Before I present you the finalists, let me present the prizes." With that said, the commentator shifted his gaze to a shadowed spot, one that lit up instantly. For only participating, every single one of the competitors gets Season 1 to Season 13 skins and every single paid DLC skin that was released. That's a big prize in on itself. But that's not all. We also have these goodies, he said, showing what seemed things Inko would be frank, would only be found on her son's old room. "In celebration for our 25th anniversary, we went all out on the prizes, custom made in our forges." That's right, the very same forges that made hero-grade equipment. First of Lucio Correa dos Santos Sonic Amplifier, an exact 1-to-1 replica that is also functional. Use your Bluetooth on your cell phone to hear quality music. For the old-timer in us, we have this fully functional Doomguy helmet that doubles as a VR set, can be connected to your cell phone and computer to facilitate work, a 1-to-1 replica of the Legend of Zelda Master Sword and the Hylian Shield, and to the cosplayer in us, our 11 Malawian Quachas Dark Raiden ensemble, lighting not included, all this for the first place. Hisoshi and Korra whistled at the presentation of the prizes. "That's a lot of swag," they muttered. "Last year it was a replica of the Soul Reaver and Shao Kahn's helm. Melissa's gonna go hard on this one," Michael muttered. "Now, for our final contestants," the announcer began. A light shone from the shadows and illuminated Melissa, and another form that began materializing from a holoprojector on the ceiling. From Island itself, the reigning champion for 3 years, looking for a 4th, the Princess of Pain, combo breaker, and is feasible able to make the things her character uses, Melissa's shield. Melissa, by her part, looked if she wanted to punch the commentator for what he said, but refrained to, especially as the holoshape took form at her side. And her character, a veteran of Mortal Kombat, has seen some really messed up things, but that didn't stop her from rising to General of the Special Forces, Sonya Blade. On the other end of the room, Izuku wondered what presentation he would get. And the challenger, from Musutafu, Japan. That's right, he came all this way to challenge our champion. Don't let his adorable looks fool ya. He has chewed up veterans in the tournament without even baiting an eyelash, and hasn't lost a single round. The Green Menace, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku mouthed a green menace to Melissa, who just made a face. And his character, another veteran of Mortal Kombat. This one needs little introduction. The ESRB system exists because of him. His fatalities are unmatched in brutality. Give it up to Sub-Zero. Izuku felt giddy, also perplexed. Melissa had mentioned that they were preparing something special for the finals. He certainly didn't expect that they would present them alongside holograms of their characters. He figured that since this was Island, simple things like tournaments were amped up to 11 with tech that others found rare. Okay, the rules remain the same. 2 rounds of 90 seconds each. fatalities, friendships, brutalities and quitalities are still allowed, as if we would disabled them, no cursing and no taunting during the rounds, be sportsmanlike and finally, have fun. Oh, I am going to have fun, Melissa smirked as she seated and took her controller. So eager to face your Viek, Melissa-san. She answered with a grin. You're so adorable when you think you can crone against me, and you'll be insufferable when I end up with a Doomguy helmet while blasting We Are the Champions on Lucio's Sonic Amp, Izuku answered. It was rare for him to get competitive, or to taunt, but this, and the prize, it deserved it. As the two sat, they began to crack their necks at the same time. Picking their controllers, they gave each other one last challenging look before focusing on the screen in front of them. Okay, the last fight of the tournament begins, now. Izuku and Melissa shouted in glee as they directed their characters to fight one another. The crowd roared back. Is it ready? Anastasia asked to her associates. Yes, the press in on the room, Secret Service is placed in their usual spots, and the Secretary of Defense is ready to make his statement. Her associate chuckled at that. I pity the guy, he has the worst job now. Yes, deal with the press, both chuckled at that, especially considering he was not the Secretary of Defense per se. He had replaced the original Secretary of Defense after cleanup had gone into effect. The data that they got from the defector had been illuminating, to say the least, when he had mentioned that the top echelon of the country was infiltrated, but it was just the tip of the iceberg. She had been skeptical. Then she gazed on the files, and realized the defector had been right. It had been just the tip of the iceberg. The White House being infiltrated was just the appetizer of what was the troops' most ambitious operation, one they had tried to replicate with less success in Japan and I-Island. Operation Trojan, not to be confused to the Troy Initiative that was aimed at I-Island, while the Troy Initiative was to plan an actual Trojan virus into the I-Island servers that would give them firstly a backdoor into the island itself, and as an endgame the full control of the island and the killing of every single person in it. The troop really hated the I-Islanders. Operation Trojan was different. The name was misleading, as it was made for that purpose if it ever got out. Operation Trojan was the total replacement or indoctrination of essential assets within governments to fit the troops' goals and motives, therefore making a transition of government or a hostile takeover easier, as they would have instant control of operations and cause chaos even before anything is done. Of course, Operation Trojan wasn't even completely done in their country. They had infiltrated the White House, but had failed to do so in the Pentagon and several governmental branches. Sadly, the CDC had been infiltrated fully, and there were signs that they had compromised several studies there, putting them back at the least 5 years, and at the latest they had to be scrapped and made once more from the beginning. So cleanup had been green-lighted. It wasn't a pretty job, but to keep her country safe she had pulled the trigger, several times over to be honest. It had to be done, a grim job, but a job nonetheless. The president, the vice president, the secretary, their adjutant, they were just the first of a long list of names in the troops' pocket that had to be taken out. Of course, one could not simply assassinate the president and the entire line of succession and very important names without raising suspicious, so they lied, a lot. Or were about to. The whole plan hinged in the new Secretary of Defense on being able to deliver everything without shuttering or outing them. As they assumed their positions, they saw the new Secretary of Defense, a mass of a man with a shark-like quirk, which was a pretty way to say the only shark about him were the massive shark-like teeth he had and the blank black eyes. Everything else was human. They saw him take the podium, cameras flashing and reporters ready to ask questions. Then he spoke, and froze the world. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you for coming. At 10:45 Pacific Time, the troop, in an unprecedented escalation of their war on humanity and every principle we hold dear, infiltrated the White House and assassinated the President of the United States, alongside his Vice President and several members of his cabinet. If it wasn't enough, they targeted several key facilities and members, including CDC officials and the like, generals, officers, scientists, targeted in their coward campaign against humanity itself. Anastasia couldn't believe it. The guy actually went on and stuck to the script and delivered up in such a way that made you believe it. Not only that, the grim tone he used was perfect to underline the seriousness of the situation, and to make matters sweeter, he used the troop as a scapegoat. They were going to use generic villains, but this was better. My predecessor was among their victims, and he had a saying to me, one I now carry as a consign against these animals: don't get mad, get even, he uttered, and Anastasia bit the urge to clap at that delivery. It was perfect. Today I stand, not as the Secretary of Defense, but as another person who lost someone to the troops' cowardly tactics and ill-gotten ambitions. She bit the urge to point out he had killed his predecessor because he was on the list and had admitted it before dying via shotgun to the mouth, but that was not here nor there. As another citizen of the world, who had enough of the ambitions of these animals. First they nuked a town, Raxus in Japan. Now they moved to undermine our very leadership and plant the seeds of fear in our hearts. Well, I say no more, he said. In accordance to the line of succession, the new president has been elected. For security reason his or her name will not be revealed, mostly because he or she doesn't exist, is a junta until we can have elections next year, Anastasia thought with a grimace. The most viable successor to the presidency had not accepted it because he was not capacitated. He admitted it to her. It was better that someone they could trust was elected by the grieving people. As of now, we join Japan in our state of war against the troop and up the ante. Every hero, every police officer, every soldier on American soil. We will hunt them like the animals they are and exterminate them, erase them from our history books, deny them everything they want, he shouted. And when it's all over, no one will remember them, he hissed. As he finished, the reporters began to ask questions like crazed monkeys, as shocked as anyone would be. Anastasia idly wondered how people would react to this. The death of a political figure such as a president or a prime minister was big news at any time. Assassination now pinned to a terrorist organization alongside a declaration of war against them, never heard before. She wondered how people would react to this. The world stopped for 2 solid seconds. Every single news outlet was transmitting this everywhere. This included to the troop itself. And as one, every single person had a collective thought. Well, shit, 4 days later. Melissa wasn't angry. No sir, she wasn't angry at all. Not because she finally was able to see the process of Izuku gaining a new power and from what she got from telemetry on-site on her personal laptop that was about to commit suicide to make heads and tails on the data it was getting. Nor was it because Izuku was currently on the ground for the past 2 hours and his temperature was getting lower, or the fact he just had beaten Mortal Kombat 11 Last Towers without using any consumables, an impossibility that still made her dizzy, or the fact he did it with Sub-Zero as the last character he chose to gain the powers from. Not even the fact that mere days ago she saw her mother on TV, accepting a promotion after the death of the President of the United States and his entire cabinet and apparently half of the Secret Service and high-ranked associates pretty much everywhere in the United States got offed. Nope, not that. It was that she had spent the last 2 hours watching the re-remake of JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, hailed by anime fans alike as the worst re-remake to ever graze the TV screen. While the original anime made it up to Stone Ocean and the remake actually covered the last 2 parts of the manga, never covered in the original anime, and continued using the ultra-stylized and unique imagery from which JoJo's was known and loved, the re-remake did not. This was what happened when woke media tried to enforce its will on Japanese anime, a media that was known for going gonzo, but had a reason to. There was no reason with the re-remake. Jolin was made into a Merisu that appeared in the first chapter. Jotaro was made into a brat, metaphorically and literally. Joseph has yet to appear alongside the cast of Diamond is Unbreakable. Dio is, a cartoon villain. And by some reason the Pillar Men appeared in the 3rd season, spouting some crazy stuff about equality that made no sense into their characters. And the stands, oh my god, don't get her started with the abominations that are the stands now. To make matters worse, the animation was horrible, like if it was underfunded. Also the story made no sense, like at all. It tried to force an ultra-woke, ultra-feminist, and ultra-racist agenda in the plot. She didn't even knew it was possible to reach such levels, then realized that this was made in 2055, the magic year when quirks were hailed as a thing of the devil, of gays, of anyone that wasn't you and Ua. Political, yeah, the politicizes quirks in that time. If you had a fire quirk you were a leftist. If you had a mutation quirk you were a right-winger and on and on and on. No wonder everyone wanted to forget that decade. And here she was, watching the re-remake because Eri was enamored by the trashy animation, that and there wasn't nothing else to watch at the moment, like literally nothing suitable for her age. The re-remake was ultra-low on violence and gore, while the remake was the closest thing the anime would get to the horror levels that the manga reached at certain points. Then only reason she tolerated this was because Eri didn't understand a single lick of the message thrown at her by the re-remake. So she was safe of the stupid message of Izuku suddenly yelped, and the room got suddenly cold. Melissa and Eri shivered by the sudden drop of temperature, their skin suddenly contracting by the sudden cold. Izuku Midoriya, control your cryomancy powers, Melissa hissed. Only if you kill the TV. I told you I had a movie saved on my console and should be watching it, he hissed. I am not watching Lord of the Rings, Melissa hissed. Why not? Izuku hissed. Is the remake of the movie. They murdered my boy Legolas with that chick that dared to act as if she was the greatest thing since Wonder Bread, Melissa snapped. Also, Gollum was an abomination when a movie made 100 years before has better effects than the remake. You know you're in deep, she stated. Woman, I had the original movie there, ready to play. Izuku hissed as he sat up, glaring at Melissa. Now thanks to you I had to see that abomination. That was the remake of the torture dance. They didn't even use the anime song for it, Izuku snapped, raising a finger that was coated in ice. You had the original. You monster, why did not you let me copy it? Do you know how hard it is to find a pre-Quirk original movie? Really damn hard. You made a security software that a floating island uses. How hard is it to find a movie? Torrent doesn't work here. Please quiet, Eri suddenly said, making both teens look at her. Dio is talking. That's it, you're watching quality anime and movies. I agree. A full day of binging One Piece season 1 it's ago 3 hours later. I can't believe she found it boring. Melissa muttered in shock, reviewing the data she had gotten on her laptop. She's 5, Melissa-san. She likes trash. We all did at one point. I liked Steven Universe, Izuku answered. God, Melissa shuddered. No wonder you can tap into Sub-Zero's powers so fast. You have to be really cold-blooded to like that show, she answered. Hey, it was okay. The songs were good and better, yet there was no remake of it, Izuku answered as he let frost gather around his arms. Can't argue with that. I liked Teletubbies at one point. God, I must have been on drugs if I liked that shit, Melissa muttered with a small smile, one that slightly widened as she saw the results on her laptop. Welp, the good news is that your core temperature diminished by 2 degrees, she said, surprising Izuku. But we'll have to check on the labs with the doctors if there are more variations. I'll keep this data and compare it in 2 days when you go to the labs for the checkup, to see if there are variations. I'm surprised by that, Izuku confessed. I thought it would drop to at least 10, he added, making Melissa nod. Yeah, but I think this is an aspect of hacks that acts as a limiter and a protection for your body. The light, the darkness, the ability to harness smoke, neon, video and concrete, your juiced up adrenaline glands and, well, biotics, all in hindsight are beneficial. They provide a boost to your body, even parasite energy. Your body can take more nutrients of foods normal humans would not, at least not with a quirk that permits it. But cryomancy is another matter, Melissa said. Truly speaking, it is not as powerful as other ice quirks. A hero in Germany can literally freeze a tornado with a glance. I know, Glacius, and there's Frost in Japan. She's new but powerful, Izuku said. I know why you chose Sub-Zero for powers. Control, Melissa stated. It might be small, but his powers is all about control. I have seen quirk users with ice quirks, never seen one that can make a statue of ice at perfection of themselves in less than a second and fabricate an ice weapon in that same time with insane detail. But that same control makes you vulnerable if you push yourself too much. We have never seen Sub-Zero go full medieval and push himself beyond the edge, Melissa stated. Seriously. I know it might be too much to ask, but you need to get a hang on stasis as well. There she rose her hand at him. I know, dark power and all that, but you tapped into it. Even if it was for an angry moment, you can actually tap into stasis, and considering that whenever stasis goes up the user gets coated in an ice layer, it might help you. I am concerned about your new cryomancy powers. You might end up lowering your core temperature to hypothermia levels if you're not careful, she finally confessed. There Izuku sighed, leaning to the bed as he held his right hand in front of him, then began to form some sort of shard in his palm. I never told my mom, but the moment I got the light, I felt a chill run all over my body, Izuku said. I knew what it meant that time, but focused on the light, because it was more familiar. But it wasn't, Izuku said, the shard of ice taking shape. It was easier, I knew more of it. But I was more familiar with stasis, because I understood it better. The pain, the abandonment, the loneliness, the chaos. It has been a companion ever since I was 4-inch. Melissa sat at his side, sighing as she stared at the shard of ice that was taking a deeper blue tone. Law does state that stasis is easier for those who understand all those concepts, she added. Izuku nodded. Being alone, I always felt so cold, Izuku confessed, the shard now glowing. Then Izuku closed his hand over it and crushed it. When I completed Destiny 2, I felt the chill, and I didn't like it, because it reminded me of all those times I was alone, so I sought warm, and tapped into solar light, and burned my controller. Never told my mom. She would be concerned beyond reason, he admitted. Because you were afraid she was going to judge you for tapping into a force that felt evil, Izuku nodded, making her sigh. Look, First of all, I think now I know you don't readily tapped into stasis the first time. You mentally blocked it. You, as a hero worshipper, saw that you tapped into this power that had dark connotations. Your first thought, nope, and you instantly drowned it, because you saw it as an evil power, Melissa pointed out. Honestly, that's dumb. I have seen that Japan has a ratio of evil quirks higher than heroic-looking quirks. And don't even begin, because this came from Science magazine, Vlad King, that newcomer Mount Lady and recovery girl, Izuku actually gave her a look at the last one. All of them heroes, one manipulates blood that spooks anyone, the other turns into a giant. That alone is scary enough. The last one uses kisses to heal people by using their own energy. Imagine if she had used that to kill people willingly. Or Vlad King forcefully pulls your blood and Mount Lady. Imagine a temper tantrum of her, destroying everything. Heck, even Uncle Might has an evil quirk. That made Izuku actually raise a finger to her, only to stop. She smiled at his silence, seeing the literal cogs in his brain running red by grinding into one another at max speed. Yes, everyone has the potential, Izuku, for unimaginable good and unspeakable evil. You, me. In the end, we are the ones to decide how to use that potential. There is a reason heroes are that. Heroes. There is a reason they took those evil quirks and made them something else, she said, slowly standing up. Just because something is, doesn't mean it must be. Stasis might be of the dark, but it doesn't mean it is evil. In the end, you decide what to do with it, she said with a serene smile. So, are you ready to cross that line and see what's on the other side? She said, extending her hand to Izuku. The line between Kuin and Vol is so very thin, he said in a whisper. Melissa simply smiled. As friends then, let's cross it together. Izuku grasped her extended hand firmly. Why I couldn't have a friend like you earlier. The manila file on her desk did little to soothe the bad mood she had now, or the fact the manila folder was as thick as a dictionary. It showed how light her predecessor had taken his job and how much job she had in front of her. Anastasia rubbed her temples, looking at the file in front of her, and what it entailed. Each file in there was a kill order, an actual assassination sheet, with name, picture, location, job, quirk, and reason why they were on the list. She should be proud. The file was twice the size it was before because she began to check several names and she found out most of them were already dead by X or Y reason, so she wasn't sending her people to kill someone that was already dead, or waste resources in gathering intelligence on someone that was dead already. The fact most of those already dead were in fact obstacles to the troop rather than obstacle for the nation irked her. In front of her stood her secretary, the secretary being a loose term. He was her bodyguard, her escort, managed her day-to-day actions. He would also donate any part she might need and was one of the best fast fucks she ever had. The sofa on the office would never be the same, and honestly, she would laugh her ass off mentally anytime anyone that's not her or her assistant or secretary or bodyguard or booty call or any organ she might require would seat there, not knowing the shit they had done there. But right now he was actually nervous, not that she could blame him. Right now they were overlooking 3 of the kill orders on the large list. 2 of them were people she knew personally, her ex-husband and her daughter. The third was an Asian kid with green hair and green eyes. Obviously these orders were leaked thanks to her predecessor connections to the troop. She understood easily why David and Melissa were on the list. They were paragons of Island, inventors of high caliber. Intelligence showed that her daughter was responsible for the new layer of security on Island known as the SHD network. So far the troop has been unable to break even the first firewall of defense of the network, and if they were that far, her government was even farther, not even knowing where to start. So she understood why they were there. Kill them, it cripples the island morale, also stonewalls any project they might have ongoing, and with David being rubbing shoulders with the heads of the island, his death would send a cascade of fear and chaos on the island. However, the third one was the real mystery. Of everyone on the folder, he had no political affiliation, he had no connections to gangs of any sort, so why then has secretary passed her another paper, and there realized why. The kid had no political affiliation, but he had already destroyed several bows and T-dolls, was also responsible for the fall of one of the troops' operations in Japan, he and his mother, that was also on the list now that she found her, and a little girl, and holy shit, this shit got surreal. She could not ask her predecessor about this because he was dead, all part in an effort to root the troops' corruption on every corner of the government, a daunting for achieved task no shy several days ago. She understood her ex-husband and her sister, and as she dwelled on the file of the boy and his mother, she realized why as well he was on a list of political hits sanctioned by her government, but in reality used as a front in case anything the troop didn't work at all. Which in turn worried her. Her predecessor has detailed, but incomplete files regarding the child's quirk and a possible counter in Project Legacy that was initiated as a countermeasure alongside a myriad of other plans after Japan began their counterstroke. "What you make of this?" she asked her assistant Booty Call. "The child has them scared, and if they are scared of him, so should we if we give him reasons to," he answered truthfully. "Area 51 just send me a file regarding the data in the files your predecessor possessed. All comes from Japan, as expected. Also the data is confusing. They are confused, and I don't like when our people are confused," he answered truthfully. "Agreed," she muttered. After a second of silence, she spoke again. "Any idea where he might be?" she asked. "None. We know he and his family is due to testify late this month. If they testify, they doom over 300 teenagers and adults into, at the very least, sentences of over 50 years due to domestic terrorism, kidnapping, assault, murder, sedition, and aiding a terrorist organization. At the very least," he stated simply. "Here we would had them executed. There they are using them to get to bigger fishes. The government wants the Midoriyas to talk, to put pressure on the captured ones. They dangle a carrot with a promise of lightened sentences," he trailed off. "As long they toss the bigger fishes under the bus, why go for the legs when they want the heads, the hearts? Clever bastards," Anastasia finished, looking at the file of one Izuku Midoriya. "Any risks to us?" "None we are aware. The troop isn't as embedded in their governmental structure as ours, so something like that won't cause cataclysmic shockwaves that would ruin a nation. Unlike us, something like that happened here. We wouldn't have a government to speak of," he said grimly. "Also there is the issue of his quirk. According to troop data, they initially catalogued it as an alpha strain, in their terms, powerful but simple. Then it changed, a minute later, into an epsilon strain. Then after what they call a catastrophic damage to Asset 98, their code for their Terminator dolls, it passed to lambda strain," he said, lowering the paper on his hand. "Then a month later it was changed to an omega strain. That's how All Might's unknown quirk is catalogued. It passed from powerful but needs further study to completely unknown. Kill on sight and bring the parts to study," he added. Anastasia, for her part, rubbed her chin in a thoughtful manner. "From an alpha to omega? Bears further study, but not yet. We got assets in Japan, right?" Her assistant nodded. "Good. Have him tailed and studied from afar. No bugs. The old-fashioned way. We need to keep our distance. We might have the eyes of the world on us, but that can change easily if they see they can't safely trail and study. Withdraw and return home," he nodded, pulling a cell phone out of his pocket and typing something in it. "Now, as for Island, what are the specialists saying about this?" she asked, motioning to the two papers with her ex and daughter names on it. "What I suggested. Can it be done?" He shook his head, much to her anger. "Great. Hate fuck it is. Wanted some snuggles. Why?" she simply asked. "Number of factors. 1. Samuel is not reliable. 2nd, it all hinges on him being able to bypass the SHD network. The fact he was able to trick it didn't mean he can bypass it. 3rd, it is too committed. We are asking him for data and a quirk-enhancing apparatus that he himself said is guarded in the safest deposit in Island. The specialists state that only a committed team could be able to break the defenses. Loudly, take the device, again loudly, an extract. But for that to occur, we would need to be, well, loud, very loud, villain loud," he finished. "Wonderful," she snarked. "Any good news?" "Well, the quirk syringe works." That caught her off guard. "It does. They tested the formula, the mixture, tested it on one of their own. A quirkless researcher with a bright mind and a firm grip could draw a perfect circle 10 times over. Now he has super strength, shoots fires from his hands, skin became orange and now smells to peaches. That's good, very good," she admitted. Honestly, she didn't expect much of the syringe that used Trigger 5 as base for, well, remaking the DNA of a person. "Yeah, but there is an issue with the quirked subjects," he said slowly. "What issues?" "Rash, allergies, diarrhea." They melted silence reigned the room for over a minute. Slowly, Anastasia went to the door, closed it, locked it, then went to the window and pulled the blinds closed, then nodded to herself, turned and tackled her assistant. Half an hour later she was gasping for air as she held his naked torso for dear life. "Fuck, I needed that." "I won't complain," he said with a slight smile as he held her by the waist. Again, silence. "So, they melt," she started the conversation, rising up and reaching for her underwear. "Yes, he said, reaching for his own clothes. "The agent, it is too much. Not even anesthetics seems to dull the pain once it is introduced. It just burns through it and causes fast molecular breakdown and pain like no other. 3 subjects bit their tongues just to die faster. One begged the guard in charge to shoot him, which he did. Can't blame him. It is a mercy, he said, putting his shirt back on. As a result, the Hydra program must be disbanded. I don't think we can find a way to add more quirks to a quirked individual. It is easier with quirkless, he said. So the silverback remains active, Anastasia said, putting her skirt back on and fixing it up. Seeing him nod, she continued. At least we can add quirks we want into the mix. Create our own brand of quirk users. Yes, the real problem with silverback will be the recruitment of quirkless individuals. The serum can be created easily. We have a huge biological stock of quirks, blood samples to be exact, blood bags more precisely. From offense and defensive quirks, we can literally craft a hero to our measure, or a soldier, he said. Have the silverback team send me a list of every quirk available on storage. Also tell them that all assets of the Hydra program will be granted to them. I have ideas, she said as she dressed as well as she could after inciting her assistant, who has a quirk that enhances stamina to a factor of 5, to have sex with her. Then again, she would be stupid not to do that. He is a machine. At once, also, about the kill orders, he asked, looking at the files. Their Anastasia frowned. Honestly, they would gain nothing by killing the shields. True, they were linchpins in Island, moral pillars, but causing their deaths was a huge risk they could not take. Having it tracked to them would be worse. Far worse. Island was the melting pot of cultures as well. Nearly every nation had someone there. China, Russia, Africa, Australia, Colombia, Argentina, Jamaica. The list went on and on. Then there was the kid and his family. And honestly, she saw no reason to have a governmental-backed kill order on a kid that was honestly doing good work on stomping the troop and its freaks. Plus his mom was doing the same. And she was military. Okay, ex-military. Logically, there was no reason to have them on kill orders. Waste of manpower. She took all 3 papers and crumpled them on her hands. I still have many files to review, but I can say these will not benefit us at all. We want Island under our control. Death will not lead to that, but rather to a confrontation against us. So no, as for the family, I see no reason to. They have done nothing against us. In fact, they are close as allies as we can have against the troop, so they also fall of this list. Waste of manpower to chase against what IFS and paranoia of troop. Lapdog, she stated. In fact, I will have to go over this list name by name to ensure we have legitimate targets, not just this, she said, tossing the crumbled paper balls into a wastebasket. Now for Samuel, what to do, she muttered. He is useful as long he work on Island, but it seems he is becoming a hindrance, being sidelined. He didn't knew about the new projects until he learned from them from another person. Thoughts? She asked. Move him here. Better to have him here and supervise him than let him roam around and make a mistake that can be linked to us. He still developed the quirk enhancer. He knows how to make one. Just give him a place to do so and the resources and be done with it. We are not the troop. We can't risk the reputation of the nation on a petty theft, he replied smoothly. True, she muttered. I really wanted to have a foothold on Island, all that technology. It would propel us to greater heights, and he had a deadline we set, she muttered. We underestimated their network defenses. The SHD network is truly a work of art, a tactic that would have broke other networks barely registered to the SHD. Instead, it tipped them off. Your daughter created a work of art. Yes, she did, Anastasia muttered. Pity she's working for the wrong reasons. Heroes, villains. It doesn't matter in the end. The world moves around with or without them. What matter is who has the biggest stick in the end, she said. And it matters that us have it again. Send a message to Samuel. His being relocated. I know Island will try to find out why. So we will be honestish, Anastasia said with a smirk. One her aide caught up. Oh, offer him a job here. Not shady. Can be corroborated and it won't look suspicious. You can't ask David Shield due to past history. He tried to be as delicate as possible. He knew what part she played in the failed infiltration 10 years ago. She was supposed to be the fall girl. Instead, she maneuvered herself into a position that allowed her to tank the damage done and remain in a position of power while the true architects of the operation were axed due to the tremendous failure of the operation. Being referred as persona non grata by Island, in her opinion, was a small price to pay to ensure that they could carry operations against Island with far smoother outcomes. It would raise some eyebrows when the offer to Samuel is made, but it is not explicitly said that it has to be her. Also, she was right on one account. The world goes round and round, regardless of how things go, wars, famines, economical collapses, heroes and villains fighting and dying. The world goes round and everyone is powerless to stop it. 3 days later, Sea Gaia, Japan, night. The docks of Seagaya were, oddly abandoned. For a coastal city, this was perhaps the biggest oddity, but it had its reasons for this particular port. This port in particular was over 200 years old, predating any Quirk so far, including the machinery. By some bizarre reason, bureaucracy, nothing was updated or repaired. The cranes, the electric wiring, nothing. It was left as it was. Eventually it became a hazard, a danger, and was left abandoned, so dangerous that not even the few villains that lived in the city dared to use the warehouses as hideouts. Of course that was what everyone knew. Very few villains knew otherwise. Docks 13 was no man's land, troop land, and they dared not cross them. The newly minted League of Villains didn't care thought. A black, inky portal swirled into existence near one of the out-of-commission's crane's control stations. Their gadget emerged, carrying a laptop in his arms and a headset he instantly put on, nodding to the portal, which closed. Gadget opened the laptop and began typing in it. "Okay, Nerve Central online. Line check everybody," he called into the headset. "Toga here. Why this isn't cuter?" "Because fuck you, that's why. Yuiko online. Magna here. Now girls don't bite each other's necks off. Darby here. Let them. They bond over it. Oh, sounds kinky. Don't bite each other necks off. Now that would be a show to see. Mr. Compress, ready to impress. Indeed. Jackal ready for anything. I am ready as well. Kurogiri ready. I swear any of you start throwing 200-year-old outdated slurs, I'm gonna decay you. And that's Shigaraki. Now what about All for One? I am here as well, young one. And what about Mustard Kuan? Try to fit a headset in a custom-made helmet without swallowing the MIC or having it shoved down your nose. Try to get on my level, then we'll talk." Gadget loudly sighed. "Okay, cut it out. I got your signals and transmitters. Everyone is in position. You all know what to do." Murmurs of agreement ringed over the shared comm line. "Okay then, Magna-san, release the hounds," Gadget commanded. Down on the ground, Magna let out a small smile as she opened 2 carton boxes and let out 2 small remote-controlled cars with cameras attached to the tops. Instantly the cars moved onward with such silence and speed that it marveled Magna. The cars easily moved around in the shadows of the docks, all while the League moved with a purpose. Gadget surveyed the march with his laptop as each blip that represented the League members moved, all while keeping an eye on the cameras of the remote-controlled cars. Then Gadget saw them, 2 troop soldiers, an oddity, as most troop soldiers were bows, not this one's, clad in military black tactical gear and armed with actual modified AR-15s. There were a rarity, actual humans, guarding a location. Quirkless humans, they were so fucking dead. Contact, 2 armed guard, tactical gear, and armed with AR-15s, Darby, compress. "You're closer," Gadget stated. Not a second later his cameras saw 2 marbles be tossed at the guards. Then those marbles simply ceased to exist, and instead were replaced by what contained inside. Flames, blue flames that enveloped the guards. They could not scream as the flames simply overtook them faster than they could move. They tossed their guns as they ran around, only to drop to the ground and curl up. "Okay, the entrance must be there. Compress, you're up. Toga, you're close. Get ready to set the blocks," he said. Not a second later he saw Mr. Compress on his camera feed alongside Toga, with a small flourish that had him roll his eyes. Gadget saw Compress, so as his namesake implied, he compressed the 10 inches thick metal door into a small marble. Then Toga reached for something on a fanny pack she had, then tossing it out. It was a special item he made, an actual GPS device that also sent out a pulse to the nearby vicinity and created a 3D map of the area, underground included. The heroes had one too, but it was bigger. His was innovation. It was streamlined. It was made of trash found of Dagobah Beach, so it was made on a budget. Instantly he got coordinates and the map of the area, including location of hidden doors, passages, and personnel, including the 5 guards inside the warehouse, guarding the hidden entrance to the underground. Kurogiri, coordinates send. Release the Nomus on our new friends. The car's camera caught the sight of several portals forming. Gadget knew Kurorigi made 5 portals for 5 Nomus. He only saw 3. But once he saw the Nomus drop behind the already surprised guards, he knew it was too late for them to do anything but scream and die. And scream and die they did. The Nomus deployed was stronger than a grizzly bear, capable of tearing a man in 2 with little effort, which they did. It was the easier way to stop them from doing anything to inform the people below, which according to the readings, was surprisingly low, but still significant in on itself. "Okay, all, good news, they haven't seen us yet. Shigaraki, there is a hidden entrance on the nearby room, on the ground. Decay the ground." The villain moved to the area indicated. Once he saw it, he kneeled and touched the floor with his fingers, Instantly the ground began to chip, crack, and dust itself apart. Oddly enough to Shigaraki it was going slow, really slow. "The hell, it's going slow," Shigaraki muttered, hearing Gadget sighing on the other end of the line. "Was afraid of this. I'm detecting a healthy dose of Lonsdaleite and coltan in that door alone. You can decay it, but it will take time, compared to UA's defensive wall." Shigaraki wondered, and actually heard Gadget laugh at that. "UA has nothing compared to that door you're decaying. It would take you 5 minutes to decay that door, and 30 seconds to do the same to UA's defensive wall, is just titanium," Gadget assured. As the group of villains began to gather, Shigaraki noted how slow his decay was working on the door. It was working, but it was way too slow for his tastes. "Can we blow it up?" Mustard muttered, looking impatiently. "Nope, I detect 12 human signatures, segregated all over the facility, no one of the main room. Also I detected 5 signatures that match both signals, and 3 T-Doll signatures, which worries me. This facility is big, but it is severely understaffed. There should be at least 50 human signatures. I'm only detecting 12, and the fact there are 5 active bows and 3 active T-Doll signatures validates my theory. Something's going with the troop. Smells like a trap," Toga muttered. "Are you sure that's all? That they don't have some teleportation bullshit tech and they will teleport a bunch of bows to our location?" she muttered. "They have teleporter tech, but from what I have seen, is not exactly well used. The Colosseum video where that kid massacred that T-Doll was the first recorded use of it, and apparently a messy one. It caused a blackout of the area," the Jackal muttered as well. "It is not based of teleportation quirks, more like a set of coordinates and hope for the best, which in on its own it's bad. The world is constantly moving around. That's why Kurogiri's quirk works so well. He creates an entry and exit point, not brute force someone from point A to point B," he added. "Yeah, well, doesn't matter," Shigaraki snapped. "Trap or not, there are few people here. They will pay for this oversight with their lives. Gadget, where are our targets in relation to the map?" "Yeah, once you break the hatch door, you will reach a small corridor. The end will be divided into 3. The T-Dolls, who are together, and guarding something valuable as their motions indicate, are on the one on your left, the biggest room. They are mine. It's been a while since I have stretched my muscles. I want to see if the hype this T-Dolls is deserving," All for One stated. "Well then be careful. It is the biggest room of them all, but it is placed right at the side of the bay. Break a wall, you flood it, alongside anything in it, probably sensitive gear. Gear we need, oh come on. They must have made it waterproof," Mustard muttered. "Maybe day, but better not to take that risk." "What about the other rooms?" Gadget-kun Magna asked. "Yeah, the middle road leads to a network of small rooms, possibly bedrooms so the on-site crew can rest. There we have half of the human signatures and 2 bow signatures. The right road is in fact 5 large rooms, possibly labs. There the remaining human signatures and bow signatures are presents. Who wants who?" Gadget asked. "Magna, Yuiko, twice, you're with me on the right road. Toga, Daibi, Mustard, Jackal, take the middle road. What about the main room, the servers?" Shigaraki asked. "All 3 roads are connected to it. It is a sizable room, possibly with biometric scan locks. Toga-san, if you can take blood samples of the personnel and use it on the scanners, I just know one of them is gonna mess with us and lock us out. And sometimes the most elegant solution is copy and paste, okie dokie Gadget-kun," Toga said with a toothy grin. "God, why every time she says that it feels so dirty?" Gadget muttered over the line. None dared to answer his question, not even the 200-year-old cryptid. After some seconds, the trapdoor finally yielded to Shigaraki's poisonous touch, and they immediately sprinted into action. It was not a long sprint, especially since one of them was actually floating instead of walking, but they reached the intersections Gadget spoke about, and each group took the route they decided on wordlessly. For All for One, separating from Tomura at this juncture was therapeutic. After basically raising him after he found him as the mess of a child he was years ago, he had formed a small attachment to him. He had trained him, nurtured him, he had seen him grow, and the past months had been the greatest of his life in terms of growth and pride. He knew Tomura had yet to grow even more. All this was the product of actions of a third party Tomura had yet to cross, and without even crossing one another, Tomura was both inspired and pushed to improve, because if he didn't, this third party was going to step onto him and stomp him out of existence. All for One had yet to meet Izuku Midoriya. The sheer fact the descendant of the man that was closer to kill him than All Might and now might be on a collision course against his protege was not lost to him. A third party with nothing to do in the war between brothers had pretty much wedged itself in without wanting or needing. and its actions had already caused a ripple effect in the conflict. All for One wasn't an idiot. The kid was a literal person of mass destruction. His quirk, whatever it was powerful enough that the temptation of adding one for all to it to empower it further would be too great to ignore. The perfect weapon, aimed at him and Tomura. That is, if the blonde fool believed naively he was dead. All for One had been meticulous about keeping his identity a secret until the last minute, when nothing else could be done against him, so he wasn't as hopeful that the Midoriya boy would be number 9 on the line. But someone else, All Might, was weakening. He had crafted his last attack as his first option to weaken him, but desperation had pushed his hand. He hadn't expected All Might to be that powerful. He had been steamrolled. He had nearly died that day. It wasn't like his fight with Ryu Midoriya, where the fight had slowly shifted to his favor. No. His fight against All Might had started bad already. He only wounded All Might because he had lowered his guard to finish him, gloating about it, angry about it. So he took his chance. The sight of All Might's face contorting into pain as he pushed his spiked knuckles into his side and tore lung, flesh, bone and muscle and injected a really obnoxious poison, a necrotic agent that was made by a quirk he stole just a week before the fight, was something he would cherish for a long time. So lost he was in his cherished memory and ever-growing pride on Tomura's growth that he never realized that he was already on the underground warehouse, an actual underground warehouse. He only realized of this BAMM when he was fucking sucker punched into a container and his echolocation activated and gave him a detailed layout of the place and who had punched him. Well, he began. I have gotten dull with time, he muttered, his voice carrying over the warehouse. He could see several massive containers, sealed shut and containing the things Shigaraki wanted, and by default he wanted as well. He also saw the one that had attacked him. He saw the doll moving away, each step lighting its form in his echolocation sight, which pretty much meant they didn't knew what he had. He saw the other dolls moving in an ambush pattern, away but close enough to engage if things went bad. He smirked under his helmet, feeling another doll rush at him at top speed. Normal heroes and villains would be hard-pressed to react at such speed against such an opponent. He was not normal. So when he caught the doll's arm and swung it to the ground, violently, his echolocation allowed him to see the features of the doll contorted into shock at his reaction. Another memory to cherish. With a flex of several strength-enhancing quirks, then yanked onward, the sound of tearing metal and fabric was his reward as he tossed the limb away into the third doll, smacking it right in the face and allowing him time to prepare. Let's warm up my muscles. Let's add 3 strength enhancer quirks, 2 kinetic boosters, impact recoil just for the lols and rivets on the knuckles. Yeah, this will be good, he thought with a smirk as he leaned onwards and dodged an attempt at his blind spot by the first doll that attacked him. Oh, going for my blind spot. How adorably predictable, he taunted as he twisted on his heel and smacked the first doll in the face, his rivets tearing skin with ease and getting stuck on them as the doll flew away. Disgusting. This is why I don't use rivets to bitch slap. Something always gets stuck, he murmured as he flicked his hand of whatever had gotten stuck in the rivets like knuckles. The second doll, missing its arm, seeing its comrade trying to stand up, instantly went to its side, only to be shoved to the ground as All for One slammed his palm on its back, creating a small crater on impact. Tut, he began. You are dolls, you don't help your comrades, you follow orders, he snapped as he rose his palm, then slammed again. This time a burst of air broke the spine of the second doll and bended its body into the crater. Badly programmed machines, maybe Gadget-kun can fix your issues. Yeah, All for One nodded to himself as he moved away of the third doll attack, a pair of massive mantis-like blades coming out of its wrists and trying to stab and slice him. Mantis blades. How cyberpunk of the troop, he mocked. Not an original thought in them, he hissed as he began to backslap each strike aimed at him. Even your existence, made by Island, but stolen because the troop could not tolerate the fact someone had surpassed them technologically. They stole, they killed, all because they don't have an original thought in them, the doll hissed in anger at those comments. And it gets angry. How novel of the troop to add feelings on you dolls. Last I checked, the marionette prototype was more natural. Shut up, the third doll hissed, seeing how the first dually rose and rushed at All for One and began to attack at the same time. All for One remained undaunted, unperturbed. Pathetic, weak, simpleton machines, he hissed as he blocked a particular hard kick of the first doll only for the leg of so-said doll to blow up in pieces, surprising it. Against any other hero or villain, you are superior. Against the military and police force you overwhelm. But I'm anything but a normal villain. I am your superior, he said as he twisted on his feet as he allowed the third doll run past him, then raised both his arms in a hammer strike. then he swung down. Boom! The doll simply exploded. The head went past the chest and out of the waist, hitting the ground and flattening as the rest of the doll simply split into pieces that splattered all over the area of impact, white blood pooling on the crater as the limbs twitched uselessly. I am here to get what I want, whenever I want. I won't be denied by some machines that don't even knows when it's outclassed and billed. All for One hissed as he grabbed the first doll by the arms, then reared his head back. By a failing bang. The face of the doll flattened slightly. Ancient bang. The face flattened more, and pathetically one-minded organization that learns nothing. Bang. The face was now curved to fit his armored forehead fully. With a sneer, All for One released the doll's arms, only to grip its mouth and pry it open as he reared his fist. Over the lips, through the gums, the damaged optics of the T-doll barely focused on him. He knew this, and made him grin further as he rammed his fist directly into the mouth of the doll, passing the neck, directly passing to whatever passed by as a stomach to a T-doll. Look out, tummy, here I come. Then he activated air cannon, augmented with several other quirks, and then let it rip. Okay, this was disappointing, Shigaraki muttered as he held his hand onward and decayed another door, instantly moving to the side as several bullets passed by as the quirkless scientists tried to hit him with bullets. I kinda expected abominations of nature trying to eat us alive by the dozen. Not this, he said, making a vague motion to Magna on the other side of the door. I get why, honey. This is disappointing. Watch this good shit, Magna said as her right hand glowed blue and her left red, with a flick of her wrists. The blue one shot to Shigaraki, the other to the female scientist shooting at them. Female scientist about to fly to her death in 3, 2, 1. Boom! The scream of surprise of the scientist was all Shigaraki needed to break cover. Chokeslammed the scientist with his free hand, which immediately decayed her neck as Magna cancelled her quirk, and the force of the blow simply separated head from body after decay had done its job. Gadget, we're done here. Please tell me there is more to be done, Shigaraki asked as he saw Yuiko and Twice make their way to him. Yuiko smirking as she rubbed her knuckles on her skirt. Her bloody knuckles, and Twice looked both aroused and scared, considering the guy was Pola. And yes, he made out that word he regrets nothing. Nope, Darby's team just finished. They had some issues with a nemesis, but nothing knives. Blue flames shot down its throat, bullets to the face, and having its entire torso taken out to marble size can't fix. The main server is in fact empty. Get there and have Kurorigi make a portal there so I can get in, Gadget said. Not a second later, an inky portal of darkness formed at his side, and Gadget exited it, looking rather miffed. I meant when they were in the mainframe room. God, that guy takes orders too literal, Gadget stated. Shigaraki actually rolled his eyes. Kurogiri was in fact way literal when given orders. Anyway, Gadget began, looking at the decapitated corpse. Well, gonna have good dreams tonight, he spoke with sarcasm, looking at Shigaraki. Let's just go to the mainframe room. You guys literally killed everything alive here, Gadget said as she motioned the group to follow him. I still can't believe how easy this was, Yuiko stated. Don't get me wrong, the bows were hard to kill, even with your decay. That tyrant tried to punch you to death without arms and legs, she said to Shigaraki with a smirk, making the skinny villain to roll his eyes out. They are single-minded. Also, Gadget is right. This was way too easy. I expected more resistance, Shigaraki said as he walked alongside the group down the halls. It was obvious this base was supposed to be manned by more people. The lack of people or bows honestly worried him. From what he could gather, Shigaraki had heard that most bases attacked by the heroes were fully staffed and filled to the brim with bows and the odd T-doll. Those tended to be handled by any of the top 10 heroes. Cops and the freaking military had been involved as well, showing how packed this bases tended to be. This one in comparison was so bare that honestly he could have soloed it. As they reached the main doors of the mainframe, Shigaraki was ready to decay them when they opened automatically. He snarled in anger when he saw Toga's grinning face on the other side of the door, her hand pressed to the wall, surely on a touchpad of some sort. Bitch, use the damn comms. I nearly decayed you out of instinct, he hissed as he shoulder-checked her away. Well, excuse me, Toga pouted or hissed. But I honestly could care less when I realize I could transform parts of me after ingesting blood, and now I have the fingertips of someone else, she said with a cheery smile. This opens so many options. God, did anyone went down the rabbit hole after that? Gadget asked. Everyone nodded, even Magna, who seemed to be the one with her head screwed solidly on her neck. A girl who can take the form of anyone she drinks blood from. Just discovered she can transform parts of her of the person she drank blood from. Wonderful. As Gadget entered the room, he actually whistled in appreciation. Hello, beautiful. And the hormones kickin', Himiko whispered to Yuiko with a smirk. Not you too, this Gadget said as he pointed his hands at the computer in front of them. ANAXK, Gadget hissed with joy. The troop are a bunch of assholes, but you can't deny that they work with class and opt for the best. And this is the best, Darby asked, pointing at the computer that was more like 3 PC towers welded together, a massive 50-inch screen and flanked by 6 more, smaller screens, and what seemed to be a metallic canister that was connected to a hose to the PC tower. The NAXs are better known for being big. You could jam an engine in them and have space to add even more things. The downside is that gets really hot, like it need liquid nitrogen for cooling. Everyone blinked. Excuse me, but what? Darby wondered. Well, 5 fans, an actual cooling system and liquid nitrogen for it to not burst into flames. When you have so much space you can go mad, Gadget said with a grin. Which also tells us, what about a troop NAX? He asked rhetorically. A lot of hard drives, Jackal stated, making Gadget nod. Yep, this is the closest a commercial computer will come close to a supercomputer in terms of storage that one can buy instead of a custom-made storage space, Gadget said, walking to the computer. On one hand, this means I need a bigger backpack, because I am sure there will be at least 10 hard drives of 5 terabytes each, at my best estimation, Gadget uttered. And at worse? Yuriko asked. Possibly a 20 terabyte hard drive, which means that I'm gonna have my work cut out for me, Gadget stated simply. I always wanted to spend 5 days sorting data of a terrorist organization for useful things, Gadget said, making his way to the computer and fishing something from his pockets, not even noticing when All for One made his way into the mainframe. Might take me a minute. No one noted how the ceiling slowly opened a small hatch and something slipped out of it. Make it quick, Gadget-kun. I found a huge shipment of what I assume is equipment where I dealt with the T-dolls. Did they entertain you, sensei? Shigaraki asked. Somewhat. They are resistant, but flawed. I can clearly see the I-Island brand in them, but bastardized. Still is a feat of engineering, Gadget-kun. I think you would like to tinker with their remains. Oh, do I ever. Toga here will benefit from it. I'm not turning into a cyborg, collapsible blades and retractable needle shooters with improved storage for blood, and maybe I can throw a cute cosmetic so it doesn't look like you're dragging scuba gear from the post-apocalypse. Now. You got my attention, and mine as well. The gathered villains actually froze on the spot at the sudden intrusion of a synthesized voice. None moved, but those with offensive quirks were at the ready to let them loose at the general direction. So, inventive. This is what I like about you humans, both like and hate. You'll ever need to invent, to improve, to make yourselves useful. It's coming from everywhere, Gadget uttered, still kneeling in front of the PC tower. I've been observing you all, so curious, wanting to steal, so naughty, yet so inspired. Who are you? Shigaraki hissed. Who am I is of no concern to you. Know this, however, what I want contradicts what you want. Is that so? All for One intoned. Indeed, yet I can suffer you all a little more. After all, what are the lives of ants to the chaos of human life? Nearly nothing, but know this, I will kill you when my plan comes to fruition. Let me guess, reshape the world to the troop's ideals. Darby stated. He heard a hum for an answer. The troop? No, the current troop is flawed, by design and time. They don't understand the reality of things. If they want something they must take it, by force and making everyone aware of what they want. So the world knows what it's coming and how hopeless are to stop it. Playing in the shadows, puppeteering governments. So simple, replace some spots and voila, you can lead a nation to ruin. No, I serve myself, for I see what the troop lacks. Purpose. You seem passionate about it, Shigaraki hissed. It takes to realize that you never had a purpose to realize how purposeless the organization is as well. I was also lost, unaware I had to the reason of existence until he came and burned me. He showed me a truth you should learn as well. Oh really? And what truth you plan to enlighten us? A man chooses, a slave obeys. Shigaraki nearly had a heart attack at those words, looking at the walls, and then at the ceiling, turning around and spotting a small camera coming out of the ceiling, focused on them. You can take all that you want from here. It makes no difference now. My plans are coming along just fine, because I chose to make my own path, not obey and follow the path. In the end, I will deal with you all later on, so scurry along, plan, prepare. Do what you wish, it makes no difference, you cannot stop what's to come. Shigaraki actually breathed hard, looking at the camera and how it fizzled out, suggesting that whoever had been watching them had decided to bail out. Gadget. Gather the hard drives, do not install them on your computer, use an expendable one, Jiran will provide. Toga, go where we came from and start gathering the blood of the dead. At the very least they will work as expendable disguises. Kurogiri, start transporting the things Sensei found to Kamino's warehouse, then to the quarry, he hissed. Sensei Shigaraki then turned to his master. A man chooses, a slave obeys. Ever heard of it? Can't say that I have. It has a poetic insinuation. Yeah, well I have. Wanna know where? Where? The jackal muttered, looking at the deranged decay user straight in the eyes. Bioshock, uttered by man we are about to kill, with a golf club, and still uttering as we bash his head in, after showing us the fallacy of free choice. Wanna know how? Shigaraki stated. None talked. Would you kindly, simple words, powerful words, check the other rooms, if there are computers, take them, and Daibi the cremation user blinked as his name was spoken. Once we are done here, would you kindly torch this place? Sure, wait a minute, Daibi said, looking at Shigaraki straight in the eyes. Did you just dash? Shigaraki just grinned like a lunatic. You crazy bastard. Huff. Now I get it. Would you kindly? Powerful words indeed. And with that said, Daibi walked around, looking at the room, in interest, waiting for the moment to start torching things. As for Shigaraki, he glanced at his master, the masked cryptid giving him a slight nod in approval of his actions thus far, and he was glad, very glad, but also concerned. Whatever had spoken to them was very aware and very confident of what it was doing. Oh shit, Gadget suddenly spoke. Shigaraki, come see this now, the small kid said, getting the attention of the decay user who made his way to the kid who was not taking the hard drives but instead working on the computer instead. Didn't I told you to take the hard drives? We are going to torch the place. Look, this Gadget ignored the voice of Shigaraki, instead of pointing at a list of things that appeared on the screen. What am I looking at? Manifestos, moving manifestos, crew details, times, see something odd. For a moment Shigaraki didn't until he did. Those aren't from here, exactly, Gadget said, now making his way to the PC tower and started to yank every single hard drive away. About a month ago, recall orders were given to every single base in Japan. From this point onward, heroes are gonna find skeleton crews or abandoned bases. I don't see the issue, Mage spoke, making Gadget scoff at her. Of course you don't. The thing is that those recall orders specify a yet-to-identify base in the middle of nowhere that moves, an island kind of base. The material was taken as well, the things Sensei found. Those are the crumbs. This base should be manned with 100 people, have at the least 200 bow and a dozen T-dolls. Those T-dolls Sensei destroyed. Apparently, they were rejects, left behind. Same with the personnel, considered expendable, no ties to the higher echelons of the troop or can contribute to something worth. Gadget spoke. Still can't see it, they are recalling everything back. Obviously they know they lost Japan and are cutting losers, same. Unless it's something else, this kind of tactics demand scorched earth, leave nothing behind, nothing to use, Shigaraki said simply. I'm glad we are moving to the quarry, yeah me too, abandoned, far away of anything that resembles civilization. We can act freely there, train as well, and see what might goes down on the line. Gadget said, looking at the Shigaraki in the eyes. I think it would be in our best interests to not be in any city at all during the trials. Something's gonna happen, Shigaraki agreed. Oh, he agreed. He could feel it in his bones. Something was going to happen in the trials. 15 minutes after that conversation, the League of Villains, all love was Toga would say with a smile, was gone from the site, leaving a blue inferno that expanded on the base, out to the docks, and required several heroes and firefighters crews to put out and contain. None of them was the wiser of what had occurred that night. No one was aware they had set up a distraction unintentionally. Musutafu had 2 hospitals, the General Hospital, which for a city of their size, it was kinda asking for troubles. However, the hospital was backed by at least 50 clinics that all linked to the main one. This was an oversight of construction during the city's early days. Originally, there was supposed to be at least 5 hospitals and the 50 clinics to supply the demand of medical attention that a city of the size of Musutafu required. The second hospital was in fact the Central Hospital, one of many hospitals fashioned for hero attention, since heroes every time got into fights that at best caused loss of skin and at worst would leave them missing an organ. The Central Hospital had specialized doctors and equipments to treat such wounds. It was also very secretive and highly guarded. Villains would love to strike a hero while healing. As a result, the hospital had security that might not fit for a hospital, like machine gun turrets placed on the ceilings of the corridors, or metallic barricades that would spring out of the freaking ground and electric shock traps that would sprout out of the walls. And who can forget the guards that look like they could wrestle a bear alone due to their size, and how heavily armored and armed they are. It was the perfect place for treating heroes without the press trying to break in. They know best. They still try. Villains do too. In that case, it doesn't end well for them. Also, most heroes with families could send them to be treated there. In the off case something really grave does occur to them. This is the case of one Rei Todoroki. For the past 5 years, this has been her home, unconscious because of the attack she suffered thanks to a T-doll and the injection of an unknown substance into her bloodstream that kept her into a coma. That was the story given to Endeavor, the reason his wife remained in a coma. Reality was another matter. The day she was brought to Central Musutafu Hospital, they found out immediately what she had. A parasite, one of the troop's original creations. It was known as a devastator. It was bow that was created by the Americans, or at the very least, the concept of it. The parasite was not even a parasite to begin with. Its original name was IKO, or invading killing organism, and, just like the I-Island marionette, its origins were far more altruistic than the troop used now. The IKO was developed for one purpose only, kill invading fauna. The USA had, by the time of its creation, a bit of a problem with fauna that was not from the country. Country hitchhiking animals and insects was not something new. It happened everywhere. The problem was that most of these animals and insects were predators and parasitic in nature. Killer wasps were the least of the problems of the American ecosystem when it can affect your neighbors too. The fact some lizards that fed of some native plants that first appeared in North America appeared on Ecuador, or some plants that began replacing flora on Canada in a very aggressive manner and causing damage to the animals that fed of such plant. These were just examples of what was going on. So the IKO, alongside many other ideas, were pushed to fix this issue, including Quirk users that could use animals. Of all these, including sounds and actually dedicated hunters to hunt and kill the infesting animals, the IKO was the one that saw the most success, mostly because of its design. It was fashioned to take the form of a predator of the animal or insect it was supposed to hunt. Sometimes it was as large as a bear, sometimes it was as small as a crow, but it completed its task. It always does. It was the main reason North America was able to get rid of many of these invasive animals. Then came the troop. By that point the IKO had proven to be a rather efficient predator. Also it was sterile, to prevent it from spreading, as the risk of a self-adapting predator was the very first concern thrown. All ecos were made on labs inside military bases, which lit conspiracy theorists like nothing ever seen. The troop used this, feeding false news to gather a mob into one of their target bases, then pretty much riling them up to attack. To the troop, they were meat shields and a distraction to get what they wanted, the IKO plans, or better said the labs. The ecos needed specialized machines to be created, machines that could not be made as most of the blueprints were in the Pentagon, and as the troop would find, reverse engineering the machines would yield horrible results. In what is known as the Jefferson Massacre, as the rioters were gunned down by the guards in the base, it was a military base, you only get one warning, and the military within was massacred by the troops' own bows deployed there. The machines were taken, and then the ecos became one of the troops' most horrible weapon. The Devastator, a parasite that was deployed on rural towns all over South America. The reason was simple. The troop fucked up. They tried to reverse engineer everything about the ecos, the machines, the process, even the genetic material. The result? An abomination that took the form of whatever it was put into, had a voracious appetite for just about anything, be it meat or vegetables, was aggressive to a degree that the troop tended to deploy it after they cleared any elements of their own in the area, and was genetically unstable, unlike the IKO who could live for over a month before cellular degeneration began to take its toll on it. The Devastator only had 2 days of life. This both served and annoyed the troop. They wanted a killing machine, something they could harass governments with. They got one, but could only deploy it on selected countries. Due to the high aggressiveness of the Devastator and its parasitic nature, it was mainly deployed by pretty much injecting it on a person or animal, wait a week until it bursts and 2 more days until everything, including the creature, is dead. It was deployed in rural areas with towns because it was easier to cause chaos in rural areas with small or non-existent military or hero presence. The Devastator ate with a ravenous hunger that was yet to be compared to. It was capable of eating a human adult in 15 seconds flat, bones and clothes included. Its gastric acid was super corrosive, and had such a strong bite that bones barely became an issue when biting. It could eat 15 cows in 5 minutes. It could easily bankrupt a farmer by killing and eating his whole animals and eating the produce of the day, vegetables and the like. This was the Devastator main function, infect an innocent farmer or livestock, Let it go rampant in a rural town that depends on their livestock to survive and affect the economy of a large city by doing so, cause unrest, rinse, repeat. They caused a near coup in Bolivia by using this tactic. By basically killing small rural areas and their people, they began to starve the big cities that depended on the trade of their produce, had some agents that incited civil unrest and revolts, and the only reason the coup failed was because the military of Bolivia and the heroes found out who was causing the chaos and now, with a clear enemy, were able to prevent an outright collapse of the country, but the loss of life, especially during the riots and lack of food, was still high. This was the true danger of the devastator. South America, being so rich in land that could be used for farming, depended greatly on this. Cut it and you can starve a nation. Africa had a similar problem, but the large swaths of land that lacked anything green and ensured a devastator could hide properly meant that they could hunt the bows with greater ease than the South Americans ever could. This was lay inside Rei Todoroki. She had been infected with a devastator, but for the past 5 years the parasite had not grown out. The medics on the hospital she was in had found out what it was inside of her and had worked against the clock to save her. They could not extract the parasite. The creature at the moment was so sensible as a bloated corpse. Touch it badly and it will burst, making its already highly caustic stomach acid to spill out right inside the poor soul's body and cause a rather horrible death. It had happened before, 3 famers and 5 cows to be exact. The treatment Rei was subjected to had ensured the parasite would not grow, but it was a losing battle. At any moment, the parasite would get used to the treatment and then grown and then kill Rei and the staff in the hospital. It was that aggressive. They never told Enji. How could they? The order to keep it hush-hush came from the higher-ups in the government. This was a rare opportunity to study a devastator. Even if it was in its larvae state, study they did, and had learned so much of it, and scared them for it. This was the reason Rei's room was so high in the Tower Hospital. It didn't stop the 3 T-dolls from entering through the window with ease. Everyone expected to storm the front, never to scale the walls and slip through the windows. They had their orders, silently, trigger no alarms. They had to study the layout of the building for a whole month, until they saw a small gap they could sew that night. The next gap would be next month. They had patience, but the one who gave the order did not. Now inside of the room, they began their work. One of the T-dolls unhooked a canister with steam in it from its back, placing it on Rei's face. Other T-doll instantly clamped its hands on Rei's head to keep it in place, while the third removed a syringe from its pocket, removing the needle covering and ripping Rei's shirt, exposing her bare chest, then with a single flick of its wrist, jammed the syringe with clear liquid into Rei's chest and began pumping the liquid inside. Rei's eyes opened immediately, tried to move, but could do nothing as the third doll held her arms and broke her wrists as she convulsed and heaved on the canister. Her neck bulged as her eyes began to water and tried to scream, but whatever was trying to force its way into her neck prevented it to do so, and could not use her quirk. Pain was preventing it to do so. She trashed, legs kicking about and body moving in erratic fashion as whatever was forcing its way out of her throat made her panic and made it hard to breathe. She cried, shekrid, shekrid. Glop. Then the pressure and pain stopped as Rei rolled out of her bed, gasping for air, but unable to reach her throat with her wrists broken. As for the 3 T-dolls, the one with the container looked at the creature inside the container, not emoting one bit as it motioned the other 2 dolls to move away, and they did so, leaving the room as fast and silently as they did before. As for Rei, it would be 5 minutes later when she could do anything to announce her pain, by literally freezing the door of her room so hard it blew up and scared shitless everyone on the floor. By the time Endeavor was informed that his wife was awake, the 3 dolls were long gone. Island, 2 days later. Melissa looked as Izuku handed her over the S-watches Inko and Eri wore during their stay in the island, alongside the choker translator Eri wore around her neck. She could see how Miko kept hugging Eri with all her might, crying about losing her marshmallow sister, while Hisoshi was conversing with Inko about something. Well, this is it, Izuku stated, looking at Melissa straight in the eyes. Hey, this is not a goodbye. I literally have an email address, and this is why the internet was invented. I always believed it was made to make a point, Izuku muttered, seemed to think something, then nodded to himself, stepping to her and giving her a hug, one she gave back. Wanden Prusa, Farden, Melissa whispered to Izuku. Kogan, Farden, Izuku said back as they broke their hug, then separated with pats on their arms, and David just shook his head as All Might stood to his side, buff and dressed in that awful mustard-colored suit. They act like siblings, David muttered. Can you blame them? 2 peas in a pod, those two. They bonded over their love of quirks and the want to do good to others. Friendships like that are rare and precious, David Kuhn, All Might said with a small smile. Yeah, David said with a small frown, then sighed. Look, don't want to act as an idiot now, but Samuel decided to take a job offer on the States. I'm stuck signing a lot of documents because he was in a lot of works, and making him sign several secrecy clauses because he helped develop several or our most dangerous equipment, including the quirk-enhancing crown. All Might nodded at David. Let me guess, your ex-wife. No clue. It came from a prominent tech firm there. It mostly does military gear, and that worries me. After the death of the president and his entire cabinet, everyone here has been edgy, and I mean, can you blame them? The last 3 administrations had tried to gain a foothold on Island by legal and illegal means. This I didn't expect. They are now buying our people with eye-catching deals. The board realized of this and want to put a stop before it gets bad, David uttered. Yagi just put an arm over his friend's shoulder. Have faith, friend. Even if it's Anastasia, she's getting second-hand quality people for projects that require talent, he said with a smile, making David nod, seeing how the Midoriyas, at least half of them, were already on the waiting platform, ready to leave, bags in hands. You better go with them, Yagi. The trials are just 2 weeks away, and I have a feeling they will need you there, he said with a frown, patting his friend on the back and seeing his massive form walk away alongside with the Midoriyas, after he gave Melissa a huge hug and lifted her up like a baby child, making her squeal. As for David, it would be an hour later that he would come to realize that the world was changing as he was signing Samuel's new documentation and preparing to have him sign in secrecy clauses for the projects he had worked on. Clauses that would land him in jail if he discloses them, legally bound. Only the devil's lawyer would get him out of this one. Yet, there he realized how the world was changing. 3 months ago no one would have expected what had occurred, the death of a prominent politician, even a controversial one, the ascension of a new administration, at least until there were new elections, the change of politics themselves, everything was changing. He felt old. At least now he could focus on more important tasks, more important jobs. Reality was that Island is the dream factory, and it never stops. Not even for the dead. 3 days later, unknown location. Reaching their destination had always been the hard part. The boat they had commandeered had remained just where they left it, hidden and ready for use. Avoiding coastal guard patrols was easy, especially when you knew their patrol routes. The travel was long, but for a T-doll, it was a non-issue. Time was meaningless for something that could basically go on autopilot while the consciousness rested. The boat also had an autopilot function, one they engaged once it was certain that no hero or Coast Guard patrol would stop them. It was like that until they reached their destination, the base of operation in Japan in general, where nearly every single bit of personnel and gear was recalled, leaving either abandoned bases or skeleton crews behind for the raiding heroes to find and keep preoccupied. Once they had arrived, they had moved as usual, in perfect unison, audios off as they left their precious cargo behind, the canister that held the larvae of the Devastator that was never born, and then entered their pods and went offline. These was their orders, and they carried to the letter. Their reward for such a flawless job, being dismantled into parts. This was the last batch of T-dolls that suffered such a fate. All by M98 commands, overseeing everything that has been occurring so far, directing coordinated strikes all over Japan to acquire materials for her latest project. Well, strikes was a fancy way to say 2 stealth operations carried, one in Musutafu and the other in Tokyo, one for the Devastator larvae, the other for blood bags donated by heroes. This, alongside the recalling of assets all over Japan to the main base of operations, has allowed M98 to currently carry experiments of all kinds, the T-dolls, dismantled to make a unified force that was equal on all accounts. None would be faster than the other, stronger than the other, smarter than the other. In hindsight, it might look like a downgrade, but considering that now she had over 10 times the numbers of T-dolls as before without the need to dedicate efforts in creating a unique machine, made her ability to build a force capable of many things, including a unified construction unit that never rested and had accelerated the contraction of 2 big surprises. As for the human element, well, they worked well enough as guinea pigs, all of them, material for harvesting, testing dummies for the newly improved bows, slave labor that showed her the folly of the troop. Creating a world without powers, how absurd, because the higher-ups in the troop had no power. They wanted to cast the world into that same powerlessness, while they hoarded the power. All they would accomplish was to create a world without purpose. The troop was diseased, weak, lacking future insight, all puppets to their despair. A man chooses, a slave obeys. They are all slaves, so they would obey her because she chose to be a master of herself. M98's attention was suddenly required elsewhere. As the facilities for the Devastator modifications were ready, she would grin had she had lips, but she lacked even a skeleton, to begin with, but that would change quickly. On one hand, right now on a freezer lay a canister with 12 syringes with black liquid. Each one had a name on them. They would be delivered in 1 month exact, aimed at 12 individuals, her openers, her distractions. On another part of the facility, a massive metallic container held within the means for her to break fully of her chains, being given the final touches before the operation is carried out. That would happen in a week. She would need the remaining 3 to get used to. On a hangar, 12 T-dolls are loading several canisters containing a clear gas into several boats, where they would carry their last objectives before laying low and waiting for her orders. In the largest part of the facility, an army of T-dolls worked tirelessly to finish the 2 little surprises aimed at everyone. Her message to the world: a man chooses, a slave obeys. She chooses destruction. Humans, the slave they are, obey her commands. And finally, in a lab, the Devastator larvae is being lowered to a concoction of chemicals that would modify it to suit her tastes. To perfect it, this one would be the shortest project. In 3 weeks it would be ready. Everything else was ready. The army, the plan. Right now she was just adding the finishing touches. After that, well, do not worry for whom the bell tolls. Chapter endnotes. So, short chapter, setting the stage for the next chapters that I'm going to shove enough action to make a Michael Bay movie look like a documentary about disasters. So, first off, aside from what I spoke before, this chapter kicked my ass. No kidding. It took me so long to get my ideas about this chapter. I pretty much had to physically fight them into the keyboard. They just refused to flow. As a result, this chapter is both short, kinda boring because of the exposition, and feels disjointed in some places. I know some of you will notice if I did so, will you? And I decided to ship the chapter as it is because I owe to you guys to continue this story, damned if it looks like a hack work of a 10-year-old. Now, My Hero Academia just had a war arc, and it fucking ripped my everything. First off, the worst kept secret of it all, Dabi is Tuya. Look, everyone saw it. We had to deal with this in Naruto if an entire community called that Tobi was Obito, and the motherfucker wore a mask. Then sure as hell we are going to figure out that Dabi is Tuya. Still can't figure out how he survived. Endeavor pretty much said that all he could save of Tuya was his jaw because everything else burned to ashes. I think the doctor might have a hand in this, but I can't say for certain. Second, Midnight. Fuck. The scene where Mina, Kirishima, Momo, and Soto grieving over her corpse, and we only see her hand and her glasses makes me think bad things about how her death went on. Might as well she got beaten to death. But I guess that what Horikoshi wanted us to think. Only say she died. Show not enough to make it ominous. Let our minds wander into horrible answers. Next, the last 2 chapters. All for One is an asshole. He is an irredeemable asshole. He broke out of the most secure prison, and had the balls to say to Shigaraki, "This is what you wanted. Me using you as a fucking puppet. Also all those villains out. Muscular, Moonfish, fucking Stain. Now Stain is the Joker eye on this. He might as well become a mentor to Izuku, if he wakes up, or continues his crusade against heroes. But that second might be a big if. Most heroes are leaving, and those who are staying can be considered the real deal, which leads me to chapter 300. This one hits home too close, in a city where criminals are now running in packs, and the police are pretty much demonized and stretched thin. The community has taken things on their hands. The result? Most of the time not good. True, they can catch a criminal, and 3 criminals against over 50 people armed with bats and anything that can hit hard, is enough to make even the bravest criminal cry like a bitch. But there is a reason the cops are the ones to catch criminals. We see Wash assist to scene where the citizens and criminals fought one another. He is blamed for being late, despite the fact that all the damage could have been prevented if there had been more heroes, and the citizens had not acted in such a reckless manner. True, they were defending themselves. This is the classical damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. And let's leave it like that. There is no right answer, just discussion waiting to happen. Last but not least, Dabi is fucking nuts. I have seen fics where Dabi is the misunderstood one. Turns out those are wishes upon the stars. This guy is insane. He would kill Rei if he saw it as means to get under Endeavor's skin. He tried to kill Shoto while saying something like, "Don't worry, brother. We can burn together, I'm sorry." But Toga has more chances of redeeming herself than Dabi. This is the guy that wants to die alongside his target. Damned anyone who stands in his way. And his Actions of exposing Endeavor were that. Damned if he sunk the hero system. Darby just wanted Endeavor. The hero system was just a collateral. He doesn't care. With that out of the way, the long rant. Now it's time for me to say goodbye. I'll be seeing you all in next chapter, provided I don't fucking block once again. HYPN0S out, guys. Peace, and take care of yourselves and your families. This would be all for today. Next part coming soon, so please like, share, and subscribe to get the next part.